Good evening, everybody. Regular meeting of the Bellflower City Council, Bellflower Financing Authority, Bellflower Parking Authority, and successor agencies that are dissolved, Bellflower Redevelopment Agency. It's Monday, it's February 8th, 2021 at 7 p.m. And this is our call to order. I'm going to announce the following. Before we begin, please note that all public meetings will be recorded. When a participant logs in via the computer or calls in to join the meeting, their name and or phone number will be visible to all participants. Unless you are providing public comment, your audio will be muted and your video will be disabled. Persons wishing to be audience members to the meeting may do so anonymously. Anonymous participants, however, will not be recognized for public comment. Persons who seek to bypass the city's host controls will be dropped and blocked from the meeting. Thank you for your cooperation. Madam City Clerk, roll call, please.
You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Mayor Pro Tem Dutton.
Here?
Yeah, he's on.
Got it. Okay.
Councilmember Hamada.
Here.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Here.
Councilmember Santinez.
Here.
Mayor Coops.
Here. All right, we'll now have our city council announcements, and I'll start off by announcing that I'd like to remind residents that Bellflower City Hall will be closed next Monday, February 17th, in observance of the President's Day. There will be no changes to the regular trash collection and street sweeping schedules. Mayor Pro Tem Ray Dutton.
Thank you, Mayor. As a part of Bellflower's Honors Program, brick dedications are now available to order online for the paved reflection area of the Veterans Memorial. The cost is $125, and all donors will receive a replica brick with the same inscription. This opportunity is ongoing until the bricks have sold out. The bricks can be ordered securely online at bricksrus.com/donor site/Bellflower Honors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Ray Dutton. Councilmember Raymond Hamada.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to tell the community, be prepared. Look at sand and sandbags are now available in the north parking lot at Thompson Park. The sand is for public use in preparation for winter storms. Look, residents will need to supply their own shovel and will have to fill and load their own sandbags. All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Hamada. Councilmember Victor Sanchez.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. I'm excited to announce that the city continues to offer virtual recreation and resource center. The city continues to offer a virtual recreation and resource center that is live on the city's website at www.bellflower.org. The virtual recreation and resource center provides fun, educational, and valuable resources during these unprecedented times. We are committed to ensuring that our resilient community members have resources to maintain healthy lives, grow meaningful relationships, and continue to have extraordinary experiences. Staff continues to update the information and resources as they become available. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Councilmember Sonny Santinez.
Thank you, Mayor. City staff continue to reach out to interested Bellflower seniors to check in on their well-being, assess their current needs, and connect them to available resources. The calls also provide some well-needed social interaction that helps promote mental well-being. Interested seniors can register by calling 562-866-8614. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Sonny. All right, next we have the African American History Month presentation, and I'll read what it says on the presentation proclamation. Whereas in 1976, African American History Month was extended to a month-long observance during the month of February, and whereas African American History Month was originally adopted to honor and affirm the importance of the history of African Americans and to focus on the stories and the teachings of those who build our nation, advance the cause of civil rights, and strengthen families and communities, and whereas African Americans have made valuable and lasting contributions to our country, to our state, and to our city, achieving success in all aspects of society, including business, education, politics, science, and the arts. And whereas Bellflower residents are encouraged to celebrate our diverse heritage and culture and continue our efforts to create a world that is more just, peaceful, and prosperous for all, therefore, I, Dan Coops, Mayor of the City of Bellflower, do hereby proclaim February 2021 as African American History Month. And this proclamation is signed by myself, Mayor Dan Coops, Mayor Pro Tem Ray Dutton, Councilmember Raymond Hamada, Councilmember Victor Sanchez, and Councilmember Sonny Santianez. So here's those of you watching us online here, there's a presentation that I just read, and we're proud to give it to those in Bellflower and throughout the area to commemorate African American History Month. Now we have presentations from CityNet and Mercy House to review Bellflower Homeless Supportive Services. First, from CityNet, we'll have Jessica Bruce and Brad Fieldhouse. Are you with us, Brad?
I'm here waiting for my video to pop up.
All right.
There we are. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. It's a pleasure to be part of the comprehensive homeless presentation update, along with our partners and friends from Mercy House. I do have my colleague Jessica Bruce. She is Chief Program Officer of CityNet. She's on the line in case we get into anything where I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm going to just... So quick update. I'm going to share my screen and hopefully you can see this presentation. Can you see that?
Yes, we can.
All right, perfect. And we will make these slides available after the presentation tonight if you want to go into any detail, because I am going to kind of give an update that does involve a level of detail, but I'm going to try and stay as high as possible so that we can move through this short presentation as quick as possible. So from a CityNet point of view tonight, we are going to be talking a little bit about sort of our ongoing outreach services, as well as this is the first time we've been in front of the council and in front of the Bellflower public to give an update on a census we completed last October. So I'm going to share some of those details and those information relevant to both those topics tonight. We did complete a Bellflower homeless census. Again, this is the second time we've done this in the city, but on October of last year, once in the morning and once in the evening, our teams went out on two different occasions and conducted a sort of, even in the days of COVID, we conducted a citywide canvassing where we tried to interview and identify and work with and talk to as many individuals that are experiencing homelessness as possible. Here's a picture of some of the team that went out. This includes sort of our standard staff that do work in the city of Bellflower, and also because of COVID, we didn't sort of make this open to the public. We kind of just had our teams come and do the work. So this represents a number of the folks that were participating in this two-day event last October. Again, real quick, since we have done one of these censuses before, we wanted this to sort of, it's not just an exercise in counting and talking to people. This for us gives us very actionable information that we can use sort of on an ongoing basis. But we did want to revisit the numbers relevant to our previous time, and I'll share a few the high points or the interesting facts here in a second. But as always, this is to inform resource allocation, to address sort of what needs are out there and what are people looking for. That's the reason why we do these on an ongoing basis. Here's the headline. If you remember nothing else from my presentation, this will be my first slide and my last slide. But this is sort of a significant number, and I think it is the headline of the night for a city that listened to its community and invested resource and leadership and partnerships to help address the residents that are living on the streets of Bellflower. These are from the 2 censuses that CityNet completed. I've done a complete presentation many months ago around the 2019, which will be colored in orange in this presentation. And then the headline is the update from our 2020 2-day census. Those are the numbers. So in 2019, in May of 2019, we interviewed and got actionable information from 122 individuals, but we identified with the teams that went out, the same teams went out on different days. We just, people didn't have to talk to us if they didn't want to. But we identified 170 individuals, and we did it again last October, and we identified 60 individuals, of which 39 gave us actionable information. Again, it's an at-will. They don't have to answer these questions. This is we ask them, and if they give us answers, we write down their answers. And I'll go through some of those answers here. I'll come back to this slide, but this is it's a 64.71% decrease. 64.71% decrease in the unsheltered street level population. Again, just using these 2-point and time count numbers, there aren't fixed numbers. This is a fluid environment, but that's a significant development as we sit here today. Some of the numbers here, again, this is a map of the city. We continue to see, as our teams are out on an ongoing basis, individuals experiencing homelessness throughout the city. And another lens here on the same map is a heat map. This is sort of by sort of area we spend our time. These are where we identify these individuals. So if you take sort of these individual conversations, which represents those people we interviewed, and you sort of spread it out over a city, you begin to see some of the hot spots that continue to inform our teams as we go out on a weekly basis on where we just be spending the bulk of our time. Some key findings on this real quick. Sort of the headline here is there really isn't anything that's unusual that we would expect to see in something like this. Just for the general public that might be listening in, the reality is that often the case when we interview folks, the reality is that they slept in the area. So you could see 74% of the 39 total people that we interviewed, 75% of them sleep in Bellflower. Others came from some of the neighboring cities, but by and large, this is a population that is in and around Bellflower on an ongoing basis. And I apologize for going relatively quickly through these slides, but I'm trying to make the high points. Ties to Bellflower, this is important. Again, on this survey, individuals were allowed to give multiple answers for why their ties are to the city of Bellflower. And it's what we would expect. Family members, they grew up here, they went to school here, their doctors are here. There's a number of reasons why the majority of people have ties to Bellflower, just like the general public. They like being in Bellflower for all the reasons that the rest of the community likes to be connected to the city of Bellflower. Last permanent residents, again, self-identified. About half of the population identified that Bellflower is the last permanent residence before they became homeless or started experiencing homelessness. And you could see that some of the neighboring cities, Long Beach, Paramount, Downey, and others, 10% of those came from outside of California. So again, the majority of them are local, and 20% are from other parts of the county. This one's really interesting for us because this sort of speaks to sort of momentum and what do we sort of expect when we look forward. One of the conversations we ask is, how can we help you now? This is the conversation we have while we're out there. And 2 things. One is about 50% of the people are interested in shelter still. Now, there's a number of reasons why they may or may not want to go in, or maybe it's COVID and they want to kind of wait till that passes. But 50% of the population that are still out unsheltered are interested in that shelter. Case management is an additional 25%, roughly. You're looking at people who want to go into shelter and or they're willing to go into some next step if we can work with them to provide a next step for them. That for us is encouraging, that while there still are people out on the streets, the reality is there's strong interest remains to get into the shelter and or to get into other resources. And again, you see that the yellow there represents there are still people that we are still trying to build solid relationships with and do whatever we can to make sure that the options we have to offer are something that they would love to consider for themselves. Comparing the 2019 and 2020 data, just a couple points to make a reference here. Start with some really good news. In 2019, we did bump into two different families, actually, that each had a minor with them who were not housed. This last year, we did not find anybody. So in our entire canvassing of the multiple hours on 2 different days, we did not find anybody that had a young minor with them while we were out. Duration of homelessness, again, you could sort of read into this and kind of make a whole, you could you could overstate the case, or you could underrepresent the case potentially, but a few things to notice here in terms of duration of homelessness. First of all, you notice that the number of people who are 21 years plus experiencing homelessness has dropped about 5% relatively, according to the numbers. You also notice that from 3 to 5 years, you see a significant increase for whatever reason. What we were expecting to see, and we haven't seen on this data, is that in 2019, you see the numbers in the blue have decreased for those that are experiencing homelessness less than a year or 1 to 2 years. We would expect that because of COVID and the financial impacts on, that we would see those numbers increase. So it was a surprise to see them actually drop from our point of view. We thought that that would be a place where, while granted that homeless effects usually take a year or two, is what we've heard and what we've read and what we've learned, is that it takes a while before the impacts cause people to run out of all their resources and end up on the street. So the jury still may be out on those, but we thought it was significant that we didn't identify a number of people living in vehicles, for example, who were recently homeless. So there's that data. Age group, other than the numbers being lower, these are actual numbers of interviews, sort of represents that same sort of trend that you could sort of read that the numbers in every age category have decreased. And these are actual numbers, not percentages. Gender, there really is no change on this. This is what we see historically. You see anywhere from 65 to 85% of the individuals out on the streets tend to be male, identify as male. And we, even with the new numbers, that percentage still stays about the same. No real change there. Street exits, this is sort of ongoing besides the census. This is because we have our teams in the city on an ongoing basis. You can see here since the beginning of the contract, the column, I'll direct your attention to the column on the right. Those are street exits. Those are temporary and or permanent solutions to resolving people's homelessness. And I'll leave this one here, but you may notice that obviously one of the game-changing events in the city happened in May of 2020. And that is the opening of the new shelter, which I'll be tossing it over to Mercy House here in a second. But you see that immediately in the months before, we were working on getting people ready for that. And then when it opened, there was, again, through partnering with Mercy House and making sure that people got in there and got, adequately according to the bed allocation and the COVID shrinking, but that 50-bed shelter, we began to refer people into that. You can see that since we have been there, we have seen 73 street exits from the streets into places like the shelter. But even like in the past 6 months, 6 of those within the past 6 months are reunifications. So they didn't go into the shelter. We actually, through case management, worked with them to identify relationships beyond Bellflower and reconnected them to family and or friends outside of the city or outside of even the state, and got them reconnected with a stable environment that essentially, hopefully, resolved their homeless situation. So you could sort of see our current case number is 44. That's what we're actively managing. Some of those people are individuals living on the streets. Some of those are ones that have been housed, that we're continuing to provide wraparound support and staying connected to them to make sure that their housing, whether it's temporary or permanent, continues to stabilize them. But we have an active caseload of 44 currently. I know there's a lot of data on there. This graph was cut and paste from the report that we send to the city of Bellflower on a monthly basis, giving a way of tracking the number of contacts we make with people, the calls for service that CityNet gets on our dispatch lines. We have hotlines that people can call, as well as referrals, how we're also resourcing people to different locations, not just giving them flyers, but connecting them to important resources such as DMV and other things like that. So you can see that. I end with this slide before I'll toss it over for any clarifying comments or questions before we pass it over to Mercy House for the second part of this presentation. But again, this is the headline. The headline is I know that when we came on board, I know a lot of people who live in Bellflower, but I know that this was on the top of the minds of residents living in Bellflower. And a year and a half later, from when we started or when we took a census, you see that good work has happened. Again, that's not just because of CityNet, that's because of the shelter, because of lots of different organizations that are working in the city and the county connected resources. But this is worth celebrating. And I've heard just sort of anecdotally chatter around town that it sort of feels different. But here's some real data that could actually help support and make that case. So I'll stop my presentation there and see if you have any questions for myself or Jessica before we turn it over to Mercy House.
Thank you, Brad, for the great presentation. And I'm going to open it up to some questions from our council members. Let's start off with Council Member Sunny Sanez.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Brad. Certainly this is good news. I'm looking at the number 60, so we'll focus on the 60. But Brad, can you clarify first, when you mentioned that 39 participants were surveyed,
Yeah.
but you came up with 60. So how did you find out the other 21?
Yeah, great question. I mean, any of these sort of methodologies to do counts come with a little bit of room for error, right? I mean, we can't sort of build a wall around the city and kind of chase everybody down. So it's based on active mapping, working with city departments and law enforcement to map out where we're at. When we dispatch teams on those days, we actually send the same teams on 2 different days. So there's a couple things that could happen. The reason we send 2 teams on this different days is because they work the same area, geography, so that if they bump into the same person 2 days later, they go, oh, we talked to you the other day. So that allows us to make sure we're not duplicating the count. Mm-hmm. But secondarily, and probably more importantly, is, you know, when we get out of our vehicles, particularly in COVID, I mean, we are wearing PPE. We brought PPE to encourage people to be safe. They are under no obligation to talk to us. Many of them we obviously know, but they're not forced to answer the questions. We do everything we can to be as nice as possible and hopefully, you know, survey them. But some of these are happening at a 7-Eleven parking lot, you know, at 10:30 at night. So they may not answer the surveys. So while we look at the sort of some key, maybe a few attributes, whether it was a male or where we saw them, we take some internal notes, but in terms of actionable data, we don't have a complete survey. They didn't fill out the questionnaire that we were asking. So that would just, so 60 is the number we feel confident. You know, we might have a little bit of data on it, but it's projected, not from what they reported. We have 39 completed surveys.
Okay, so if you were to kind of estimate,
yep.
The survey was done in October, and today is February. Yep. So it's been more than 4 months have passed.
Right.
So can you say that the number now is even lower than 60, about 60, or higher than 60?
A good question. I'm not sure we would with confidence be able to say that, just because. But
what's your gut? Well, no, this is your gut feel. I know there's no survey. What's your gut feel?
I think it's moving in the right direction. So for example, here'd be an interesting number. So we looked at the 39 and the 122, right? So 122 survey participants the first time we went out, and this last time we had 39. I had our team run an analysis of how many of those 39 were in the 122. Maybe somebody who didn't talk to us twice and we haven't been able to kind of get some movement. There were 7. So that speaks to the fact that homelessness is sort of a fluid situation. We have people that are falling in and out of homelessness, or maybe the day we were there, they were out of town, or vice versa. So I don't know. Without doing another complete census like that, I would hope that we're somewhere in the 50s up to 60. Again, what's different with this than maybe some of the other counts that happen nearby or in your city is there's no extrapolation. We are not guessing. We don't see a car that looks like there's neighbors living in it, and then we call that 2.3 people. If we don't talk to somebody or see them, we don't count it. So this is truly a count in that sense.
Okay, I see. Now, the other result of your survey is that it showed a significant percentage are sleeping in Bellflower without ties to Bellflower. Do you remember the bar chart? The previous one. No, the next one, I think. There's no ties to Bellflower. Okay, the 18%.
Yeah.
So do you have any idea why they chose Bellflower?
Well,
I'm curious.
It's an obvious answer. Why wouldn't they want to stay in Bellflower, right? I mean, isn't that where, right? Isn't that the answer that I should be giving? Is everyone wants to live in Bellflower?
To live, but
I have no idea. I mean, they could be not wanting to answer the question. They could have been over the survey by that point, but probably the truth is they are just sort of, they're just saying, this is where I'm from. And they don't necessarily have any historical connection that they are telling us. So I'm not sure I could project that.
Okay. Now, before the participants or the unsheltered go to the shelters, our temporary shelter, what are you working closely with Kingdom Causes?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, not in the referral process. The referral process, I mean, unless that's a connection point, unless it's to establish connections, then we would. I mean, our referral process goes straight through Mercy House, and we are looking for Bellflower Ties in every one of those cases, obviously, because that is what the shelter's for. But if we're working to establish on a case management standpoint, yes.
Okay.
We'll work with
prior to going to the shelter.
Correct. Yeah. All the people who are referred into the shelter, we establish some sort of Bellflower tie, whatever that may be. And that may take a couple people to connect those dots, but yes.
Okay. So, and then you mentioned earlier that once the individuals are now in the shelter, you continue to provide wraparound services.
If and when it makes sense to do so, I would defer to, I mean, Mercy House is a great partner. They run great shelters. So if we give all of our case managers give our cell phone numbers to them so they can contact us at any time. And in some cases, we do continue to work together with them. Maybe they fall in and out of shelter, then we'll try and bring them back. But we defer to Mercy House at that point since they take over sort of the lead role within the individual, but it's varied. Some people, once we get them in, they don't want to talk to us anymore. Others we talk to regularly.
Okay, thanks for the clarification, because I was kind of worried about the duplication there. Yeah. So basically, once the individual is in the shelter, Mercy House takes over.
They are the lead agency at that point, yes.
Okay, and I have to tell you that the number 60 is really good. I mean, it's music to my ear. If you say there's only 60 homeless in the city of Bellflower, that's great news. On the other hand, if you have if we were to, by one more question, Brad, when you talk with the individuals, are there any specific reason that you can recall why they don't want to go to the shelter?
I'll toss to Jessica on that. She oversees all our staff. I'll see if she can give an insight, whether it's specific to Bellflower in general, but that's a great question. Jessica?
Yes, so the clientele in Bellflower are not used to having services just because of the way the system in LA County is set up. So clients don't understand shelter in the capacity that Mercy House provides it. So they're used to going to downtown LA to Skid Row, standing in line, being, shuffled into a room with many people and very crowded. So when Bellflower created the shelter and Mercy House was the provider, it's a new program and it's a different type of program. And they're very leery still, of shelters. So it's taken a lot of, interaction and engagement with the clientele to get them to go to the shelter. We've taken the clients so they can see it and, try it out. And so you'll see a number from some of the clients that will go into the shelter and ebb and flow in and out of it. But it's, shelter in Bellflower and in LA County and the capacity that Mercy House is providing it is different than what the original shelters are in LA County. So we're still selling, these shelters to the individuals in Bellflower because it is not what they're used to. They're thinking we're taking them down a Skid Row and putting them into a system like that, where they don't realize that the Bellflower shelter is really nice and spread out, and Mercy House staff is amazing and really works towards that housing plan and getting them into permanent housing.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you so much, Jessica. Thank you, Brad, for the answers and for the clarification. And as I mentioned earlier, the 60 is a very good number at this point. I mean, it's only been open for over a year, and I think for about a year. And I think we still have a long ways to go, but I think we are in the right direction. So thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. San Ynez. Councilmember Victor Sanchez, have you any questions, comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple questions. Sunny asked a lot of the good questions. First off, Mr. Fieldhouse, it's a pleasure to meet you this evening and the rest of the staff that's with you. Just could you put back on the screen the list of all the months and the outreach and all the numbers that you have? This one, there you go. So that's the street outreach. Can you kind of give me a little summary of how this is taken about? Because one thing I see here is October 2020, you go from 40 to 101, and then you stay in 3 digits for the last 3 months. And I just kind of want to understand what that where is this coming from? Is this people calling your hotline? Is this people calling out and saying that there's more activity going on? I mean, kind of just if you
Yeah,
can
let me
share
walk
with us.
through those just for future reference, or for reference for anybody that might be interested. We do have in our dashboard report that we do submit detailed explanation of each one of these, just because some of them, I'll fly over them right now, but there is some nuance to some of these. But in essence, the first one is outreach context. This is us just interacting with individuals. So this would be when we're out talking to people. Sometimes, for example, we bump into a lot of people because we're moving from one person to the next to the next. And other times we talk to one person and we end up spending the next 4, 5, 6 hours working with that individual. So this can be a duplicate number in terms of individuals. So that's why some of those numbers vary a little wildly, because it can be duplicate over a 30-day period. Outreach call lines, if I can just kind of keep going, then you can clarify if you need to. Outreach line is, these are people that reach out to us. We have a hotline on our website and other places where they call us and we answer that. And they say, hey, we're from Bellflower. Can we get help? We'll either set an appointment or come by and meet them. Those are individual ones. That just kind of fluctuates. Maybe it's because of the time of year, or they hear about something, or it's cold outside. Referrals to services are specific interactions that are for people that are, so it's not just like, hey, here's a list of services, and then we check the box. That's a direct linkage to some sort of key access point to them getting document ready, whether that's DMV or some other certification or birth certificate or whatever it may be. It's us getting them linked to those resources. And street exits are those HUD-defined categories, roughly about 30 plus of them, that are temporary and or permanent classifications in the government management, homeless management information system. Did that answer your question, or do you want
Yeah,
to?
that answers. Thank you, Mr. Fieldhouse. That answers my question in the most part. For me, I felt I understand that this is fluid. I get it. You're doing a census in 2 days and things shift and people move, new people come in. I understand that. And so for me to look at that, I kind of now understand that there's possible duplications there in multiple contacts with the same individuals. Because for me, it actually, the way I saw it first was an increase, right? So in October, you had 60 individuals, and all of a sudden now you have way more outreach happening. So to me, that seems like an increase in numbers, perhaps. But that answers my question. Thank you. My next question is from Mercy House. Are we at capacity there in beds, or what's our current number? And I know that I looked at the report from maybe 2 months ago, the one we received in December. I don't think I've seen the January report yet. Are we at capacity there? How many more individuals can we actually house or temporarily?
Mr. Sanchez, why don't we hold that question until Mercy House makes their presentation?
Oh, thank you very much, Mr.
Yeah, and you'll be able to, they'll present right after we
Understood.
complete our questions, and then we'll lead off with that, and it'll kind of flow together. Have any other questions of CityNet?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, one more then. On the no ties, Mr. Fieldhouse, what's the process for us because I know that I wasn't here on the council when this agreement came about with Judge Carter, but can you kind of just briefly, 20 seconds, give me a summary of what happens when there is a clear no tie to the city of Bellflower?
Jessica, I'll defer to you on that.
So if there's no ties to the city of Bellflower, they will not be able to access your shelter unless we work with your public safety and sheriff to get authorization to be able to do that. So clientele that do not have ties to the city of Bellflower, as your street outreach team, we still want to get them housed because we want them off of the streets of your city. So we'll continue to work with them on a long-term housing plan from the streets and offer them shelters in different areas or wherever they came from. Look into those options, that will be available to them. But because they're standing on your streets, they are the city of Bellflower's, responsibility to take care of and get moved on to their next location. So we'll continue to work with them on a weekly basis towards that long-term housing goal.
Great. Okay, that's a good, thank you. I appreciate that answer. Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Mayor, that concludes my questions at this time for CityNet.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Councilmember Raymond Hamada, have you any questions or comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First off, again, I mean, I too am very pleased to see the progress. And I want to thank Brad and his team for being our boots on the ground here and making things happen. Because I've been here since your start here, and definitely been always looking forward to the reports, and I've always seen some great information. So I want to again thank you, Brad, and your team. Some of the questions, Brad, you took care of the one about the ones that don't want to go to the shelter. I did see the graphic, and then you mentioned the 7 that you surveyed from both years, and maybe just to elaborate more on those 7, if you can. Did any of those 7 have ties to Bellflower, or are they just keep roving back to our area? That's one.
Yeah, good question. I don't have access to any of that data.
Okay.
I don't know the login to our bank accounts, and I don't have access to the details of all of our clients.
Sure. All right. Yeah, those again, those right now off the bat seem to be the perpetual ones that are going to continue to be homeless.
Yeah.
Hopefully not, but and maybe those are the 7 need some extra attention. Brad, do you see more homeless now in vehicles than the first year?
Yeah, I don't know if we asked that question. Jessica, do you know if we asked that on this specific survey?
You know what, there was more data that there were a few more individuals in vehicles this census, but Councilman Hamada, I can look into that and shoot you over an email with more of those details regarding, those 7 individuals and the vehicle portion of it.
All right.
We do have a larger presentation and a lot more summary documents. I didn't want to get into the weeds of some of these slides, but we will be providing sort of a comprehensive summary document that breaks down a lot of that for you. But as
All
a
right.
general rule,
Good. I'll look forward to that. I'm on the board of directors for Kingdom Causes, and I do want to thank you also on behalf of that organization of the partnerships that have come forth in again dealing with this issue. So again, Brad, I want to thank you and your team, and again, good luck, and hopefully that number, that 60, next time we talk to you, will be at least cut in half, but hopefully it'd be a 0. But again, best to you.
yeah,
Thank you,
Kingdom
Mr.
Causes, Bellflower is a great partner, and they do care deeply about these individuals. And I've often said that every city should have a Kingdom Causes plug in their city, Kingdom Causes Bellflower in their city.
All right. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Hamada. Mayor Pro Tem Ray Dutton, any comments or questions, please?
Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem Dutton may have dropped off the meeting for a minute. If you could just give him 1 more minute.
Okay.
Hey, Myra, I'm on the phone because, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Give me a second. Yeah, I just have to do a, oh, hang on. Oh. Computer. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just going to have to go by phone here. I'm going to get in the death circle on the Zoom, and something's going on. It just disappeared and closed out. Anyway, I'll reboot it later.
Have you been hearing our meeting so far, Ray, with the questions being asked of CityNet? Are you up to speed on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been following it.
Good. I purposely called on you last because I had a feeling that you were having some technical difficulties, and I wanted to make sure that you were able to work through it. But if you have any questions of Brad, now's the time.
And no questions right now. Great presentation. I love the numbers, and let's go with that.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Ray Dutton. So, Brad, I want to conclude by your part of it by saying I'm so grateful that you took the chance to work in Bellflower, and the results speak for themselves, 170 and 60. You know, keep up the good work. I don't know if you continue to have a relationship with Judge Carter. I'm assuming you do, and if you do, is there somehow that you can relay these results to him?
Yeah, absolutely. Great idea. On behalf of the city of Bellflower, and I'm sure you could do the same, but we will communicate this to them. I mean, the reality is, again, to your earliest comments, right? When we first came on, I mean, I know we're an agency providing services, but the conversation bigger than CityNet was, how do we get ahead of this? How do we set an example for LA County cities? And I think again, this, you know, the pandemic is still raging, you know, on and on and on, but I think this is sort of shows what could happen with the resolve and dollars strategically leveraged. You know, I think this is what you would expect to see. And I think that's what you're seeing is what we expect to see. So we will pass it on to Judge Carter.
Thank you very much. You know, with a 3-point approach with CityNet, Kingdom Causes, and Mercy House, we've really tried hard to give the best we could to try to change the environment for homelessness here in Bellflower based on the city's people in the city who live here and have requested that we work on this. And I'm proud of the fact that we've got players like yourself and CityNet, Mercy House and Kingdom Causes to be able to complete the project. But I know that it's not finished. I look forward to the next report when hopefully it'll show even more numbers off the street. And right now I'm going to go on to Mercy House, where we have Larry Haynes and Timothy from Mercy House to review the services at New Hope Bellflower Homeless Shelter. Guys, are you available for comment?
Yes, just trying to get my video to work. There we go. There we go. Good evening, Mayor and Council. We appreciate you having us here tonight. Thank you for investing in all of your services, be it outreach with the shelter or additional services in terms of addressing the needs of the homeless population. As mentioned, I am the CEO of Mercy House. Along with me is Timothy Wynn, our Chief Program Officer. I will steal a line from Brad. Timothy is also here to correct all the stuff that I get wrong, which is more than likely. So I'm glad, Brad, that we work off the same playbook there. If the city will the city can forgive a quick personal note. Brad and Jessica are old friends, and it's good to see you guys. I'm sorry it has to be over a video and for so long, but it's great seeing you guys, and thank you for all of your good work. I want to just take the next few minutes. I do not have a lot of visual aids. We will have one near the end, but I want to take a few minutes to provide an overview. I want to talk a few things about what we're doing well, what we're not doing so well, where we need to improve, and then end in terms of why we do this in the first place. And for the end, I'll leave that to Timothy. And then, of course, at the end, answer any questions or answers that you have. The quick bit of history, as you know, we started about 8 months ago, the middle of last year, May of 2020. An interesting note, I know this wasn't necessarily the intent, but roughly about half of our staff are actually Bellflower residents. So I think that's kind of cool that we've got a lot of local people from Bellflower also working at the Navigation Center, and have just been a wonderful team, everybody there. I want to touch just very briefly on our numbers. As of December 31st, and so we do a lot of our data analysis on a quarterly basis, and that would be the last quarter. So the numbers are a little bit dated. We've served 104 people since opening. Going to get a little into the weeds here, but I think it's important. So then what you want to do, the quality of any navigation center or shelter, you really want to start talking about housing placements. You want to talk about impact to the neighborhood and what kind of a neighbor are you, and I'll get to that, impact on the overall city. But really, for all of us who do this work with any seriousness, we really care about those housing placements. And it's the data is interesting. Of our known exits, right? You have people who leave a program where you know where they went and some who just somewhat disappear. When you want to, what you really want to do is measure the folks that are known exits, because that will really tell the tale of the quality of your program. And what is interesting is that roughly 50% of the people who have exited our shelter have moved into permanent housing. Let me provide some context for that on a national basis. And it's also important because we're going to talk at the end about things that I think we need to do to improve. On a national basis for a low barrier shelter, the data is a little hard to find because it tends to be hidden, but we've had a couple of our key staff do some extensive research on it. And on a national basis, what we find all across the country, generally speaking, your housing placement rate for your known exits is about 15 to 20%. So in a very short amount of time, we are far exceeding the national average. This also is consistent with all of the other facilities. We run 11 navigation centers all across Southern California. And so a lot of what we are experiencing in Bellflower is exactly what we're experiencing elsewhere, both inside and outside of the immediate area. And so I think that speaks well. I think those numbers also would tend to reflect and sustain and support the decreased numbers that Brad and Jessica referenced. And so I think you've got a couple of things going in play here that are reducing the number of folks that are literally out on the streets. So I think that's good. And I'm hopeful that number will continue to increase. Next thing we want to talk about that I think is important, and it's always a tricky thing, it has to do with your neighbor relations. And Sonny, I know you were there. Some of the early community meetings were a little confrontational, right? They were tough. And when you're trying to place either a shelter or a housing project, it can be a little intense. It can be a little difficult. And all we ever asked for was to give us a chance. All we ever asked for was, let's see what happens, because we understand the reasons that a surrounding neighborhood would be concerned. It is a reasonable thing. We're in a residential neighborhood, and it is a reasonable thing, for homeowners to want to see their property values increase in value. That is reasonable. And anybody that does anything that might detract from that, I think has a lot to answer for. Around the corner, we have private businesses. Usually the profitability margin for private businesses is 2 and 3%. I mean, that's just a handful of customers a month that can decide whether or not you're profitable or not. So anything that we do, while we want to advocate on behalf of the poor and the homeless and in their homelessness, we have to understand we can only be successful if we take a holistic, integrated approach to how we approach our services. When we do this, we have to be able to give a credible answer to what I would call the competing virtues of people who want a high quality of living around them, who want reasonable increases on the value of their investments and profitability for their businesses. And God forgive us if we don't take that seriously. And we do. And that's one of the reasons that I think we've been successful. We will admit we did have some minor complaints in the very first month, but all we ever asked for the neighbors was see how we respond. And we were able to respond very quickly and have had a terrific relationship with our neighbors ever since. We've even, because of our cameras, our security cameras, are able to help a neighbor resolve an insurance claim with an auto accident because, well, we caught it on tape. We got the video. And it was something that was able to support the neighbor. So I think we're slowly being seen as an asset. We are also seeing local businesses surrounding the area. They're starting to donate, both in terms of goods and services, whether it's cash donations or in-kind donations. They're starting to support the navigation center. So it's going exceedingly well. And since we've opened, since that first month, we have not received any further complaints that have come to my staff, at least on site. So we take that very seriously. Is it going to be perfect? No, there's no way it's going to be. But what we can be is responsive and respectful of the issues that drive those concerns. A little bit dull, a little bit boring, but I do want to touch just briefly on our budget analysis. We've done a deep dive. We've gone through every line item, every penny. We are on track. We're going to come in either at or under budget as promised. We see no issues there. I think while that is not usually the most glamorous aspect of anybody's report, it is something that we do think that is very interesting, or very important rather. Now, I think we've done some things well. Our housing placement rate is well above national average. We have, we've had great relationship with our neighbors. We're managing according to budget. We're doing the things we are supposed to do. Having said that, however, there are some issues that have emerged over the last 8 months where we can do better, or where there needs to be, some improvement. A lot of these are driven by the COVID pandemic. Just a quick history lesson, just as a reminder, the Navigation Center was established, before the pandemic hit. So when it came to things like spacing of the beds and all of that, it didn't meet the new guidelines that all of the newer facilities are going to have. And so, as you recall, this was a 50-bed shelter, and those numbers had to be reduced, pretty dramatically. And so that is definitely something that has impacted our numbers. I am proud to say that staff, I think, we've worked very well with city staff. City staff, in the best way possible, has encouraged us and pushed us to be creative with our usage of space, and with some redesigns, making use of space for beds that we didn't before. We were able to get to 46 of the 50 beds that were created. So I think that's actually quite good. And those 46 beds will meet all of the sort of HCA healthcare guidelines that they need to address best practices under the COVID pandemic. Obviously, as we move on, God willing, we will be able to go back to the original design. But in the interim, once we are up and full and going, we will, be able to approximate pretty credibly the numbers that the city tried to establish. Now, a question was asked earlier, and I think my answer is both a combination of good news and bad news. The toughest question, if I'm a council member, that I would have for me is, look, man, I'm looking at the reports and you're nowhere near where you should be in terms of bed usage. And that's true. I believe our numbers currently are 27, 28, if I'm not mistaken, which is low. Let me also suggest that that's good news. Let me also suggest that that means that there are room for some of those 60 people that are out on the streets tonight to get into the shelter. So this is actually good news in terms of driving our numbers down even further. Question has to be asked, why? Why are the beds not full? And the reason is that we have had 2 outbreaks, and on 2 separate occasions, we've had to be quarantined, and we could not take people in if we wanted to. It was not legal. It was not appropriate. And so we did have a freeze, and that did hurt our numbers. I am happy to say, and Timothy, correct me if I'm wrong, but we are now out of quarantine and we are now open up and we are ready to take all referrals. And so we should be able to get those numbers up rather quickly, would be my imagination. So I do want to express, yes, the numbers are down. The reason they are down is not because the shelter is not working, not because we're turning people away, not because our outreach partners aren't doing their jobs, but because we're following the appropriate guidelines under the COVID regulations. And again, the good news is we are now open. We are regularly testing our staff and our guests on a weekly basis. We are doing everything possible to engage and interact all the safety and hygiene protocols. I mean, COVID hits everywhere. I mean, there's so much that you can do. I do want to address one thing, though. There was, and with this, I am going. I'm going to turn it over to Timothy in just one second. There is a reason that isn't often spoken of, and we have found it. And I'm not going to out anybody because I want to protect privacy. We found it with some of our current guests, and we've heard it in some of our other programs as well. There are always reasons given why somebody doesn't want to go to shelter X, Y, or Z, right? And we've all read them in the papers and we've all heard them ourselves. I don't want to follow rules. I don't want to stop doing X. I don't want to stop doing Y. Somebody was, I don't like other homeless people. I mean, you can kind of fill in the blanks, right? But, some of the reason why too is, in addition to, and I do think that Jessica is right, this is a new service and people the community needs to get used to this service being in place. We also have folks that are a little ashamed as well. Shame is a big factor as to why some people don't come into shelters. They're ashamed of their hygiene. They're ashamed of the status of their mental health. They're ashamed of their fear. They're ashamed that they are so desperate. And sometimes it's easier just to hide that. You know, so this is why groups like CityNet work so hard, and they will tell you it's usually not one touch. It's usually not one engagement with somebody out on the street that gets them into a program. It's multiple. You got to build trust. And our own staff have to work doubly and triply hard, and and engage all the trainings that we offer them to make sure that people can trust our caseworkers. It's not simple, but that can also be a barrier as well. The other things are true, they're real, those are real issues, but let's not forget that shame is as well. And that takes us to our broader point. The biggest challenge that we are going to have, and we'll work more with city staff and our friends at CityNet and others late down the road. The number one issue that we need to be able to do in terms of the navigation center is plug into the broader local COC system to get our people placed on, to advocate for people to get placed into housing off of the regional waiting lists. Sometimes the housing outcomes aren't necessarily indicative of the job that the navigation center is doing. Sometimes it is more telling in terms of how healthy the housing side of the equation is. When you open up a shelter or navigation center, it's sort of like free flow, right? We are only one part of an entire process. It starts with your outreach partners. It starts with CityNet, making good referrals, getting them to us. It then comes to us, the navigation center, and creating housing plans. And every single person in our facility has a housing plan. In fact, they all have multiple housing plans. But then there's that third part that neither CityNet nor Mercy House has complete control over. And when you work within a system, it's getting the system to accept your people. So we're going to have some work to do in terms of advocacy. We're going to have some work to do in terms of creating our own housing. We're going to have some work to do in creating our own housing resources if we're not going to be able to get it from the existing system. But that is the next thing on our list for these next few months. And that will also increase our housing placements. Having said all that, I'm about done here. I'm going to turn it over to you, Timothy, in a second here. It's easy to get lost in the numbers. I think all the presentations so far have been really good. I think CityNets have been better. But we talk about numbers, and sometimes we forget the why. Sometimes we forget why we are doing this. We forget who is behind these numbers. And I'm going to turn over for a second and just take a minute or so, Timothy. We just want to share with council, and we have full permission from this client. We are very sensitive to this issue, to tell a story. And I think it's important to know who we're serving and whose homelessness we're ending. And with that, Timothy, if you'll take a minute or two, then council, we were happy to answer any questions that you might have for us.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, council. If you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen. Let me introduce you to Sharon. Sharon became homeless about 10 years ago when her husband died, and she found herself really without a support system. 10 years is a long time to spend on the streets, especially for someone living with disability like Sharon. She found her way to the Bellflower Shelter New Hope. She was actually referred by our partner Kingdom Causes, but she had a really hard time adjusting to life in the shelter. Being on the streets, living with her particular disabilities, she had some coping mechanisms for being on the streets, and with the challenges to mobility, she carried a lot of that shame that Larry talked about. I think it was really hard for her just to be around other people and to accept the help that she needed to do, her day-to-day activities. You'll notice in this picture, Sharon is not in homeless shelter. This story ends very well with our help, with the kindness and compassion of our staff, with the necessary improvements that when we designed the shelter in Bellflower, we were really particular about making sure that there was accessible spaces. Right? The hallways were wide enough. That there was an ADA accessible restroom, a shower facility. Because we know the people that we serve, they're living with challenges that we can't imagine, and we need to be able to meet them where they are, and create a housing plan for them that meets their needs. Sharon's actually connected through the coordinated entry system with a permanent supportive housing voucher. There's a project-based voucher for a site not too far north and west from Bellflower in LA County. It's actually in spot 8. And so she spent some time at her at the Navigation Center while we were waiting for her move-in day. And while she was there, we worked on connecting her to all the benefits that she qualifies for, so that she would have steady income. And now today, she's actually moved in. It's a PSH unit, that's permanent supportive housing. So that means she has ongoing supportive services, right? So there's a case manager that provides a regular intensive case management with Sharon, make sure that she is able to continue to live stably in her apartment. You can see that is her apartment. I believe it's a converted hotel space that's now a studio apartment. That's all hers. She's going to live there until she decides she wants to take her resources and live somewhere else. She's not homeless anymore because of the hard work that we've done, because of your commitment to meeting the needs of people who are homeless in your community. So thank you.
Want to thank the council, and we are happy to take any questions that anyone might have and address anything that we might have left out.
Thank you, Larry. Councilmember Sonny San Ynez, have you any questions or comments on the presentation?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Tim, for your presentation. Great presentation. And as always, it's really good to hear good news. Larry, let me just kind of address your comment earlier about focusing on the numbers. And let me assure you that the City Council, and I think I can speak on behalf of the City Council, that it's not just about the numbers. But if you recall, by addressing this issue, the City Council really shows that we care.
Yeah.
That's the only reason that the shelter came into being, because the City Council cares. And unfortunately, we have to focus on numbers because that is the best way to measure success.
Mm-hmm.
And I go back to the statement from the mayor earlier that way back in 2018, we have a clear directive from our residents to fix the problem of homelessness. And we took it very seriously. And again, I'm saying that numbers, unfortunately, that's the only way that we can measure success. So we need to work on numbers. But let me assure you that all of us care about the homeless situation in the city of Bellflower.
Great. Unfortunately, we have both good numbers and good stories, so that's good.
Great. And I'm with regards to Tim's presentation, I expect to have a lot of success stories coming out of the shelter. Excellent. I do, absolutely. Now, Larry, going back to the question, the numbers you gave us about, again, 104 served, does that include the currently being served at the shelter, or just?
It does, sir, yeah.
It does, okay, yeah. So anyone who got into the shelter, there's total of 104.
Right.
So that's pretty good. And based on what you have stated, that the functional capacity right now is 46 after COVID.
Yeah.
And with the census of 27 or 28, so we have room for about 17 or 18. And so that's good news. And it becomes a challenge now between you and between CityNet and Mercy House to fill that, because we still have 60 people out in the street. So you still have your work cut out. Larry, how do you coordinate with CityNet regarding those participants who are going back on the street? Because earlier you said that 50% went to permanent supportive housing. And I'm assuming that a portion of the other remaining 50% went back on the street. Is that a correct assumption?
Sure. I'm gonna let Timothy answer that in full, but the one thing that I will just say as a prelude is there frequently you will have somebody who will just leave without notice, without any indication, without any comment, and so that is also a little bit part of the challenge as well. So, you know, in our communication with saying that, I could well imagine the conversation. Well, hey, great, Larry. Well, where did they go? Well, I don't know. They packed up and they left. I don't have a whole lot more than that. But no, we do. I'll let Timothy talk a little bit more. But in terms of both people coming in and people going out, we do everything we can to stay in close communication with all of our partners. But Timothy, is there anything you can add to that?
I'll say that we definitely do coordinate with CityNet and our outreach partners when it comes to clients that are exiting the shelter, especially whenever we can. If we're having an exit interview with the client, we're going to keep track of where they're going and what their plans are, and we're going to provide them with, you know, those referral informations. Hey, make sure you reconnect with your CityNet case manager. Here's a phone number you can call if you've lost track of your CityNet case manager. And you know, our staff talk to CityNet staff because they're providing those referrals in. So that doesn't mean there's, you know, the information doesn't stop once they reach our walls. So we're a team. We're partnering, even though we're different agencies. Our mission is the same.
One of the nice things from a city's perspective and having both CityNet and Mercy House work together is that we've known each other for quite a while. I've lost count of how many years, for example, Jessica and I have known each other. We go back quite a ways. So I know for a fact that both Timothy and Jessica have each other on speed dial, just for, if that's even still a thing, for just these sorts of conversations. So we're pretty familiar with each other's organizations.
Side, are there any instances wherein a participant, people who are currently living at the shelter right now, cannot leave the shelter because of lack of permanent supportive housing?
I am so sorry, sir. Could you repeat that question, please? I missed the first half.
The question is the flip side. Are there any situations where you have a homeless, people in the shelter currently that are ready to move to a permanent supportive housing, but they could not move because there is none available?
That is a frequent occurrence, not only at this shelter, but at this navigation center, but at every shelter all across the country. I don't know that exact number off the top of my head, I don't have that data point in front of me right now, but that is absolutely common. And in fact, again, not just with this shelter, not just with our shelters, but all shelters across the country, what we are seeing, unfortunately, is a trend. Due to COVID, we are seeing extended stays. Length of stays is another measurement point that we have in all of our facilities. How long is somebody, staying with you? And a lot of that has to do with access to housing stock has been more challenging during COVID. So yes, council member, that is something that happens frequently. The quickest way to get more people off the streets is maybe not so much to build a whole bunch of more shelters, but to create more housing units and more housing solutions, because what that will do is create a flow. We're creating a flow from the outreach teams, getting them into the temporary shelter, and quickly getting them into housing. It's all about the flow. The reason that people get stuck is that there isn't always a place for them to stay. So we wait, because what we don't want to do is somebody who's done all the hard work, somebody who's done exactly what they're supposed to do, and then simply put them out on the streets just sort of arbitrarily because they've been with us for a certain period of time. That doesn't make any sense to us, and that's not how we operate our programs. But yeah, no, absolutely, that is a real challenge that we face.
Larry, can you hear me? My question is, how do you address that challenge now? How do you find permanent supportive housing for them?
So again, this comes to working with the coordinated entry system and advocating for our folks. We also bring in other resources. We bring in additional financial resources for reunification. I know that was a strategy that was referenced by CityNet. We bring in our own resources for rapid rehousing. And we are open to be a developer. We are open to develop more affordable housing in Bellflower and the surrounding areas to address these very issues. I am going to say When it comes to the issue of housing, I've been doing this for over 30 years. And what I've lost a little bit of patience with is the notion that we want a quick and easy answer, because there is no quick and easy answer. We know what to do. We know what the answer is to ending homelessness. It's creating housing. And some of us have been saying this for 30 years. And had we started 30 years ago, we wouldn't be in this situation. So what we need to do is do the hard work of creating the housing units so people can move into them. In the interim, we will advocate for it within the coordinated entry system. We'll bring our own resources for unification. We'll bring our own resources for rapid rehousing. But at the end of the day, we need a system that is better functioning, and that system has to have access to permanent housing units.
So right now, what's your conduit? Where do you find the permanent supportive housing for them?
Permanent supportive housing, by definition, always has to go through your coordinated entry system. Everything has to funnel through the system. You can't create it outside of that. That's not how funding works for HUD anymore. It all has to go through that. So what we do is we make sure that the coordinated entry system has all the data information for all of our clients. We make sure to lobby our regional coordinated entry system to accept our people. Those are the only things that can be done. You can't go, it's for permanent supportive housing. Those referrals, the funding sources always demand that you work within the system. Always have to work with coordinated entry system. Every single one of our housing project, that's how it all works across the country.
So I'll add, if I may, our navigators on site, they've engaged with the CES in LA County. So Bellflower is in SPA 7, which is the service provider area. I think that's what that stands for. And that's so we've done trainings with their HMIS system. We're connected with the SPA 7 match meetings, and they're very familiar with the CES matching process. You have to get a certain laundry list of documents for every client, so that we know what it takes to get our client's document ready. So what Brad said, document ready earlier in his presentation. Well, that's a reference to the coordinated entry system requirements. So once a client is document ready, that means they have all of the documents that are required for CES to match them to PSHU.
I'll do it. Gentlemen, excuse me, let me interrupt. This is all well and good, and the presentation has been helpful. And I see, and Larry's 100% right, it's not just about the numbers, it's about a majority of things here. I think we're a little far afield here. We've got multiple items to get through on today's agenda. And as much as I'd love to spend 2 hours talking about this, I think we need to move along here and getting through here. And I suspect that what we won't do next time is wait a year before we have you back, and probably come back and do this again in 90 days or so, and narrow our discussion, because everything you said is germane, everything's worthwhile, but we have a huge agenda to get through tonight. So I'd kind of like to get through the questions and wrap this up, and as opposed to having a long, ongoing philosophic discussion how to end homelessness. We're not going to solve it tonight, and I agree it's a long-term solution, and I think we're in for the long haul here, but we need to move through the rest of this meeting tonight.
Of course, thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much. I think next time, I don't think you should be presenting together at the same time with CityNet. Okay, that's my suggestion.
Probably so.
Okay.
We'll take your lead.
All right, thank you.
All right, Sonny, you've concluded your questions?
Yeah, as I said before, a long time ago, whenever the agenda is homelessness and cannabis, expect it to be a long meeting.
Well,
okay. I said that many times, a long time ago. Those two subjects take a long time, okay? I rest my case. Thank you.
Do you want to go for 5:45 in the morning like we did with cannabis? All right, Councilmember Victor Sanchez, have any questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor, I'm only gonna, yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I'm just gonna make one comment, ask one question. First off, Larry, Timothy, thank you very much for the presentation. The work that you're doing and actually getting people into permanent housing or being a part of that is the most important part, in my opinion. With that, my one question is, who is the coordinated entry system? Is that LASA? Is that PATH? Is that Kingdom Causes? Can you explain who that is for me?
Yeah,
or just tell me who it is. You don't have to explain it.
LASA holds the coordinated entry system.
At your local, who's your local rep for that? Because LASA is the overall at large, right?
Mm-hmm. Let's see. I don't personally know who our LASA SPA 7 rep is, but our navigators are connected.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Thank you guys for your answer. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was it.
All right, Councilmember Raymond Hamada, questions and comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not to I won't, belabor, but again, I want to thank Larry and Tim for for their commitments to being part of a true team effort here, and definitely want to congratulate them for making this shelter one that's compatible with the area and definitely being a good neighbor out there. Look, I know that the community wants to help. And again, recently I took a team of pastors out to visit the shelter, and they were quite pleased with the facility. Again, your professional team, the maintenance, the service that was being provided that they saw, they were quite pleased. So I definitely want to again compliment you guys on that. Maybe my question again, maybe this is just for the benefit of the public. What is your typical stay at the shelter? And I know there could be an extension, but why don't you just convey that just for information, again, for the public?
Sure. Timothy, do you want to take this or do you want me to?
Go ahead.
Okay, so our average stay at this shelter and most of our shelters is going to widely vary. I'm going to try not to get overly philosophical, but generally speaking, it's usually under 100 days in terms of getting somebody placed in housing. Now that can widely vary depending upon individual circumstances, so statistics can be a little bit misleading, but generally speaking, that is why. And one last note is we want to make sure that what we're doing is sticking with somebody until they get housed. We don't want to set up an arbitrary deadline because that just simply creates more homelessness.
All right. Okay, thank you, Larry. Again, let me just leave it at, I think we need to, again, put it out that there is new hope that's, coming from your shelter. So again, I want to thank you guys. Again, good luck with the future on it, and we'll be here to help. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Raymond Hamada. Mayor Pro Tem Ray Dutton, questions and comments?
I apologize. I didn't hear anything. I'm not trying to be unresponsive.
No, that's fine. We're looking for Mayor Pro Tem Ray Dutton's comments.
Mayor Pro Tem, we cannot hear you. He's giving a thumbs up sign.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. We'll take it.
Oh, Ray's completed his comments?
Larry, before I add it, this is not meant to be a tongue lashing. I've been your biggest evangel out and speaking with communities, and the work you're doing is fantastic. We're just trying to get through a meeting here. That's all. So.
I get it. I just want to answer questions properly. I want to make sure that yeah, no worries. My apologies. It was just joking in there. Sorry.
No, and I think comments well spoken that maybe we need to have you back a little sooner than every 6 months or a year, and maybe we should separate your presentations from CityNet so we can concentrate on you and CityNet another night. But we've learned as we go here. But I want to thank you for your presentation. Thank you for all you do for the city, and I want to especially thank you for being good to the neighbors over there, because I, like you, was at the initial meeting, which was very confrontational, and you've done a lot to soothe their concerns over there. So good night and good evening. We're going to move on to the meeting.
Thank you all very much.
All right, public comments, Mr. Stewart.
This is the time set aside for the public to address the City Council on matters not listed on the agenda. Those wishing to speak on an agenda item must utilize one of the methods listed on page 2 of the agenda. You will be given 3 minutes to address the City Council. Attempts to provide comment at times not designated on the agenda may result in the city dropping you from the meeting.
If you'd like to speak, please use the raised hand feature. If it's by computer, it appears under the Participants tab. If by phone app, it will appear under the More button at the bottom right-hand corner. Or if by telephone, simply press 9 to raise your hand. You will be called upon by the Deputy City Clerk in the order received. You can unmute your microphone so that you can provide your comments. So, Madam City Clerk, anyone available for comment?
Mayor, I have a raised hand for Constanza Pachon. If you'd allow me a moment to get the timer on the screen, you may begin. Give me one moment, please. Okay, go ahead, Ms. Pachon.
All right. Is there no video?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go forward, please.
All right. No. 1 second. I just got the video. All right. Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and council members. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address the council. My name is Constanza Pachon. I am the CEO of The Whole Child, a nonprofit organization providing housing and mental health services to vulnerable families in the region. The Whole Child is also the Coordinated Entry System, LASA's designated lead agency for families in the region. That means that any identified homeless families in the entire region, 26 cities of southeastern Los Angeles County, must filter through the homeless services division of The Whole Child. On behalf of the board, the staff, myself, and our clients, I'd like to thank the council and the residents of Bellflower for their support of our services. I would like to share some of our results. Last year, The Whole Child served nearly 4,000 families, providing 45,000 hours of mental health therapy, including to 31 Bellflower resident children. We provided housing services to more than 1,500 families, including 165 families in Bellflower. We provided permanent housing placement for 360 families, including 15 families in Bellflower. We delivered enrichment parenting resources to 350 families, including 7 from Bellflower, and nutrition services to 4,000 families, including 272 from the city of Bellflower. This summer, we're going to centralize our housing services, parenting and nutrition in a new site in the neighboring city of Downey, making the access for Bellflower residents easier for our services. Later, I'd like to share that later this year, we're breaking ground on a homeless to homeowner complex development where we're going to have interim housing for families, permanent supportive housing, again, for families, and ownership opportunities in partnership with Habitat for Humanity as well. We are, and it's a coincidence that I came to address the council today on the heel of the presentation of our individual homeless providers, or some of them. Some of you were asking about the coordinated entry system. Again, The Whole Child is one of the 3 legs of the system, with PATH being the adult lead and Jóvenes being the youth lead. Thank you very much for your assistance as always, and we're happy to come back on another day to give you more details on our services. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Deputy Madam City Clerk, have you anyone else that'd like to come forward?
Yes, I have Dennis O'Malley. You may begin.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. I'm Dennis O'Malley, and I'm the CEO of Caliva. I've been with Caliva since 2017, and I'm joined here with my colleague Larry Thacker, and we look forward to commenting on agenda item number 9 tonight. And just as a quick background, I'll be speaking about Caliva's corporate structure and ownership, and also just wanted to express our commitment to doing business in Bellflower and commitment to the community. And I look forward to answering any questions I can at that time.
All right, we'll look forward to your testimony later in the agenda. Madam City Clerk, anyone else on the line?
I see no further raised hands at this time.
All right, thank you for looking into that. And we'll move on from public comments over to item number 9. Make sure I didn't skip it. Yep, number 9. And what this is Mr. Stewart, would you read that for us, please? And then I'll explain what the city attorney would like to have us do on this.
Sure. And this is consideration of possible action to, 1, adopt resolution 21-08, a resolution establishing policies and procedures for modifying existing cannabis business permits as to ownership or business name, and 2, conduct a public hearing to consider adopting resolution number 2021-09, a resolution adopting a fee to recover costs incurred from processing applications for modifying a CBP or cannabis business permit as to ownership and business name. And I think, yeah, Mr. Berger is going to add to that how he wants to conduct the hearings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My recommendation on this particular item would be first to talk about the policy and the draft resolution. This specifically relates back to your December discussion and your January discussions about potential changes of an ownership within the permittees and potential changes for the names of permittees. Secondarily, once you've decided on the policy with regard to that, you can open the public hearing, discuss whether the fee is appropriate, and then close the public hearing and, if appropriate, adopt the resolution. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions of Mr. Berger? Hearing none. So you understand what we're doing, guys. We're going to divide this item into 2 items. The first part will not be a public hearing, but then I'll look for a point when we complete our discussion as to go forward with a public hearing, and I'll look for support for that.
Correct. And Ms. Stover has a brief staff report to help get the council going on this item.
All right, so ready for the staff report.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. This evening, I'm presenting agenda item 9A. As was just discussed, we're actually going to split it up. My presentation is not exactly split up, but I will try my best. Resolution 21-08 is a resolution establishing policies and procedures for modifying ownership or names of a current cannabis business permit or a CBP, and that will be the first section of it. So Resolution 21-08 would establish a method by which CBP permittees, and those are existing CBP permittees, could modify their ownership or change their business name. It would allow for only current permittees to submit what we consider a modified CBP, allowing for limited ownership and or business name change. In the resolution that we brought forward today, the proposed ownership restructure would be substantially similar as to when the City Council first issued the CBP to that permittee. The name change would not violate community standards or confuse residents, and a financial and criminal background check would be required for any new person or persons that would be added to the ownership structure. That's for resolution. And then I'll go ahead and go into. So for this item, it's recommended that the City Council consider adopting Resolution 21-08, establishing policies and procedures for modifying ownership and names of existing CBPs.
And let me start. I should have said this at the beginning when I read the title. This comes to us by way of an issue that we did not address when we first enacted the CBPs more than 2 years, almost 3 years ago now. And what happened was at the time the council had not considered the question of what would happen if they changed ownership. It was the council's view that we did not want people to change ownership, but in the course, it's the way of business every day, and the way the world changes, ownership will change. What we've learned was that gradually, through omission or commission, it really doesn't matter at this point, some of the, at least one business and probably 2 that we've issued the CBPs for, the ownership profile has changed somewhat. And rather than just say no permit for you, we decided that perhaps it'd be best to have a discussion whether or not the council did want to allow for an ownership change, which is the recommendations that Ms. Stover just made. And 2, since we're doing that, we'd want to recover our costs for the actions that it would take to allow for said change. So what we have first is a policy change, if the council wants to do this, that would allow for methodology and the guidelines to change ownership. And of course, we're subject to any conversation the council wants to have on this. We took our best shot based on what we think the council was looking for on this. But Understanding, of course, that as we get into the discussion, there may be some changes on this. Secondarily, if the council does go forward with that policy change to allow a small or moderate change in the ownership of these CBPs, then we would have to get through the fee process, which is a separate action entirely. So what this is a natural evolution of a business and a CBP process that we knew would evolve over time, and this just is another natural evolution to it. And unfortunately, we tend to get to these things when we have to, rather than always foreseeing them. We try our best, but sometimes it just sneaks up on us, and this is one that did. So with that, I think it would open the discussion for the City Council. Answer any questions you might have.
Mayor Pro Tem Ray Dutton, any questions on what we're discussing here?
No, Mayor, I don't have any questions.
Okay.
And just for your information, I want to just stay on the phone so I can have audio. My mic's not working now.
Okay. Stay with us, Ray. We'll get back to you. Councilmember Ray Hamada, have you any questions or comments about what we're discussing?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in reading the report, in my view, it appears to come across with adequate and reasonable, measures and conditions to render, confirmation of the intended changes. But a couple of specifics, staff, in reading the first reso outlining the requirements. My first one comes up on the page 3 of 6, section E, in regards to if the application seeks an ownership change. Again, the application must also include. And under number 2, about the evidence demonstrating, will be, and the word substantially. And again, just to be clear, substantially means more than 50%.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'll try to tackle that particular question. An issue arose with regard to the original applications. What the council discussed the last time it considered this particular matter was basically a comparison between the 2017 applications and what the ownership looked like today from each of those permittees. So just taking a hypothetical example, if you had 4 original owners and 3 of those owners remain, that would be a substantial compliance with the original ownership as contemplated and considered by the City Council in 2017. One of the things that the application does not have from 2017, though, is a breakdown in ownership between the various individuals that may make up a corporate entity, may make up a partnership, however the permittee is arranged. And the reason that some of this language is a little bit, I'll use the term squishy, is because we simply don't have a firm comparison between the 2017 numbers and whatever numbers would be produced in 2021, meaning that staff can't pick up an application and say, so-and-so had a 35% ownership interest in the corporation in 2017, and today he or she has a 34% interest in that ownership. So there is some subjectivity that's built into this resolution, and along those lines, it's the city manager's best estimation of whether or not it substantially is in conformity with what the 2017 application or not. We can certainly tighten up the language and make it much more mandatory, but that's the original reason for the draft language. Happy to answer any questions.
Yes, Carl, does that also go for the key individuals? Was there a prior list and compared to a new list kind of thing?
So the original application form asks each applicant to list the proprietors. And in 2017, the City Council had gone through a process to determine exactly who the proprietors were and how to identify them. So the original application list, when you look at it, has a list of proprietors, and it says who owns or controls this particular permittee. And then it has a number of slots in which individuals can be listed. And that's where that comes up with exactly what you've identified, where an individual may not have had an ownership in the company, but they may have been a key manager or a CEO of the company or what have you. So they may have had an employment relationship with a permittee, but not necessarily an ownership, which is why there's a 2-tiered system with regard to what ownership really is in this particular resolution that you're considering tonight.
Yeah, suffice it to say, Mr. Ahmad, had we do it over again, we would have had a percentage estimate on the original application, and we just didn't do that. And again, it's just part of the learning curve in doing so.
Sure.
So what we need to do is get to a snapshot in time now and what that percentage ownership is, and have an understanding what that is, and then we have much more data to go forward with in the future to make sure it doesn't vary much.
All right. Staff, Carl, did you want to
just to add in to what the city manager mentioned? That's why there's in parentheses, if you look in that exact same subsection in parentheses, it says if available from the origination date. We don't know sitting here today whether or not indeed the original applicants have that information or not. They should, but we don't know that they indeed do. So that's the reason for the little bit of squishy language in that particular section.
Squishy, legal term, huh? Carl and staff, again, one last question. And it's, again, pointed to the background check. And it makes reference to police department, which likely will be the sheriff. Now, is that the only provider of the background check, or
it's
I know
actually,
some places go with DOJ, or is it all combined, and will they touch on some of the other databases that are out there?
Randy, you want me to?
Yes, Mr.
Okay.
Hamada, this is Randy Stover. Actually, we do a DOJ. That's the live scan, so it does go through the DOJ, and then also we use LASD to do a background check as well. So they just run the names through their system.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Thank you for the confirmation, staff. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Hamada. Victor Sanchez, have any questions or comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just actually one follow-up on the same question that Councilmember Hamada had. The vagueness of that, it's on number 5E2 is kind of a little, I'm trying to digest that. I for some reason, I thought it was 75%, at least from what we had talked about. If there was more than a 25% change in ownership, that would, would be the threshold. But I guess I understand why the need to go in a squishy language, I guess, as Carl was mentioning.
Yeah, it's a snapshot. Mr. Sanchez, it's a snapshot. For instance, we believe that with the change that we know that Caliva is going to ask, that it would exceed the 25% threshold. We believe that the second one that we know is coming will not exceed the 25% threshold. Nonetheless, it's what we're dealing with today. And again, if we had the data, the 25 would be hard and fast. We could make that go. So what we're hoping to do is have a resolution that allows us to establish a ground base on what the percentages are, and then in the future we can go forward with more assuredness on how to do that. And then, of course, there's always if there's any doubt, then we just bring this item to the council in case there's doubt on what the ownership is, which the council is always the fallback on those sorts of approvals. But we were hoping not to have to bring everything back to the council. This is when we had what we consider to be routine changes.
Understood. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm comfortable with that. Staff bringing that back at a later date, or establishing that policy on their own. So I'm okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That concludes my questions or comments at this time.
Thank you, Councilmember Sanchez. Councilmember Sonny Sanyanez, questions and comments?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Stover, for working on this document. This is a perfect example of a living document. If you recall how this document has been transformed from day one up to now. I mean, there's been a lot of changes. So I'm going to go back again to that, I guess, becoming a sticking point, the E2. I had a discussion with the city manager about this, and in my mind, I cannot believe for a second that an owner doesn't know how much he owns in a business. Okay, so when a person goes into a business, that person must know how much he owns. It's just basic, okay? So what I would propose, having said that, what I would propose to make this language very clear is to eliminate the parentheses, what's enclosed in parentheses, so that it will read such evidence should include a comparison of ownership interest on the origination date and the application for modification CBP. So there's no doubt anymore. They need to prove to us how much each owner owns from day one on the origination date. I think it's not up to us to figure it out. I think the burden of proof is on the applicant.
And as I indicated, with staff is comfortable with that change, Mr. Senate, as if the council wants to do that, we're good.
All right, thank you. Because that will clarify a lot of things. If we very basically stick to that point that they should provide it to us, then that should be okay.
And Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the only thing that I would recommend with regard to that is to make it a mandate. So rather than have may or should, it would be must. Evidence must include, and then you would subtract out the language in the parentheses, and the sentence would continue a comparison of ownership interest, and then it would continue to the end.
Okay, all right. So I'll go along with that. And Mr. Stewart, clarification and the change of ownership, because on section in the definition of ownership, a person with an aggregate ownership interest of 25% or more. So if there's any change of amounting to a 25%, that should trigger basically the reapplication. Is that?
Yes, that's right.
Is that how you envision that?
Yes, that's exactly what we envision. Yeah.
Okay, so to me, it's very clear already based on this resolution. If we adopt this, it's very clear to me. It's very clear already what's going to go to the city council for approval.
Yeah, I'm only so comfortable approving this stuff. You guys got to share the pain with me, so it's all good.
Yeah. We're all in this together, so to speak. Okay, that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Sanyanez. Mr. Berger, I have a question. We're dealing with corporations, not proprietorships here, correct?
I believe there are, most of these are actual incorporated corporations, but they're all corporations from the standpoint of they're either LLCs or actual incorporated entities. There are no individual proprietors that I'm aware of that has an actual permit.
Now, since I own a corporation, every year I'm required to work with the Secretary of State filling out forms that indicate who our officers are and who holds what percentage of the ownership of the corporation. Don't we know that same information from the same source?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I don't know that we've actually downloaded any of the information from the state with regard to the corporation. What we've relied upon initially was the applications that were coming in, and the consultants at the time would double check that information from available sources. But some of those corporations were newly formed and may not have had their articles of incorporation, for example, readily available for download from the Secretary of State. So I can't, that's a factual question that I can't confirm, but certainly right now, all of those entities can be confirmed, so we can certainly confirm them.
Yeah, I would think it'd be public knowledge, so that would not be a mystery. All right, so at this point, let's invite the public in. I know we have Mr. Thacker in attendance, and anyone that wants to come forward, please make yourself known.
I have a raised hand for Dennis O'Malley.
All right, let him in.
Yeah, hi everyone. Again, I just want to thank the council members for letting us speak to you today.
Excuse me, Mr. O'Malley. Just one moment while Miss Deputy City Clerk puts up the timer. Sorry about that.
Sure thing.
You got 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Yeah, first, just thank you to the council members for letting us speak to you today about Caliva's corporate structure and ownership. And really, I'd like to just express, our voice of appreciation for this progressive view that the city's had on this resolution. What I want to do is just walk through Caliva's path and how we've grown over the years. I think it was well put in terms of the notion of this is a natural evolution. And at least for Caliva, and I've been an officer, at Caliva since 2017, that we've gone from a nonprofit company to a for-profit private company, and since January 15th of this year, a for-profit public company. Throughout this process, when I was working with my colleagues, I absolutely saw that we need to do a much better job of communicating with the city of Bellflower and the city council. And I'm here to apologize for that. And I will take personal responsibility that we will have improved communications in the future. And so in terms of clarifying our ownership in terms of our licensed retail outlet, it's really just to ask the council's forgiveness of what we learned through our misinterpretation of what that 2017 application was in terms of that term proprietorship. And certainly just respectfully, I ask the council to let us be able to correct this issue and certainly be part of the Bellflower community and to be a valued part of that. And we really take a lot of pride in terms of our, Deli by Caliva store on 9535 Artesia Boulevard. We opened it up in November of, 14th, 2019. We're really proud of our, 34 employees that continue to serve the community of Bellflower in a very safe manner. And we've implemented contactless, pickup and delivery and electronic payments to keep everyone safe. And we're really proud of the $1 million in taxes that we've generated to date, including the $450,000 that we've generated, for the city of Bellflower. So we've always strived for full compliance with all city and state regulations. And during that renewal hearing on December 10th, we discovered from the city that we did misinterpret the original CBP application forms, and that we were unaware, that our application form at the time did not conform with city's intentions. So we absolutely, again, voice the appreciation for this resolution and happy to answer any questions around Caliva's journey throughout the time. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for your testimony. You made it right at 3 minutes. That worked out good. So, council colleagues, have any questions of Dennis? And let's start with Ray Dutton. You got any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. Like Sonny said, this can be a living, working document that, can be fluid at times to get to where we need it to be. And it's very flexible, and we can be flexible or we can use the hammer portion in it. But anyway, I have no questions.
All right, Ray Hamada, any questions?
No questions, Mr. Mayor.
Victor Sanchez. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I absolutely want to echo the same sentiment as Councilmember Dutton. It is obviously a living document, and it's something that we're all learning through, or the city is learning through, and the council members are going through. So flexibility may be prudent in the situation, but at the same time, establishing a more concrete definition moving forward is best for the city. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Sonny Sanyanez. Questions, comments of Dennis?
I just have a comment, Mr. Mayor. I'm very pleased with the document, the way it's based on the amendment on this resolution. I'm very pleased with that because if you recall, from day one, we were not allowing ownership changes, and it's a sign of the times we allow for minor changes. But again, if there is as a reminder, if there is substantial change, it can happen, but you have to go through reapplication. So I just want to emphasize that. So we haven't closed the door to anything, and you can do anything you want, but there is a definitive process to go about a minor change and a major change. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Santinez. So Dennis, you can hear we have no questions of what you offered, but anybody else that want to speak on your behalf?
Mayor, I have a raised hand for Larry Thacker.
All right, let Larry in.
All right, I'll go ahead and share screen. Give me one moment, Mr. Thacker. Okay, you may begin.
Hello, Mr. Thacker. We're ready to speak.
Hello, Mayor, City Council. My video is coming on, but thank you for this opportunity. It has been a while since I've spoke, but I just wanted to again thank you guys and the city for all of the opportunities that we've had. We have enjoyed being a part of this city. Look forward to the coming years and to continue our partnership. I just wanted to say thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Thacker. Deputy City Clerk, anyone else like to give testimony on this item?
Mayor, I'm seeing no further raised hands.
All right, so gentlemen, looking for a vote on this, and then we'll separate and go to the public hearing secondly. So do I have a motion and support for this item?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion for the City Council of Bellflower to adopt Resolution 21-08 with the modification on Section E2.
I'll second that, Mayor.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilmember Sunny San Ynez, supported by Mayor Pro Tem Ray Dunton. Any further discussion? If not, roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Dutton,
Aye.
Councilmember Hamada,
Aye.
Councilmember Sanchez,
Aye.
Councilmember Santinas,
Aye.
Mayor Coops.
Aye. All right, so I guess we'll continue with the staff report from Randy.
It's the fee resolution, Mr. Mayor, and the fees. And probably, Randy, do you want to outline those quickly?
Yes, I'll outline this very quickly. Resolution 21-09 would set a fee resolution to recover costs incurred from reviewing the modified CBP. And here, let me break this down for you just a little bit clearer for you. Here is the overview of the fees that would be collected. It would be $3,410 and an additional $100 for additional live scan and backgrounds from LASD and DOJ. And this would be
Per person,
just to recover costs.
$100 per person or for everybody?
The $3,410 would include one person. If there were any additional persons, it would be $100 extra dollars per person.
Does that conclude your report?
That concludes my report,
All
yes.
right.
Thank you.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem Dutton, have you any questions of the report given?
Mr. Dutton, I believe you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Test. Okay. I know the numbers came out of the staff report. I am assuming that those numbers are fee recovery.
Yes.
That is correct.
That's my only question, making sure. Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Ray Hamada.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick one. Again, as we've talked about this in past also, referring to as a fixed fee as a starting point, and it could be, I mean, there could be added fees for the background check and live scan. Do you foresee any potential back and forth between staff and the applicant in regards to their, completeness of their application, and would it be able to trigger any additional fees from staff to then recover those if it goes beyond, for example, the city manager, 2 units? I assume that's the 2 hours, and so on. So that was my only question.
Mr. Hamada, I don't believe so. I mean, it's pretty cut and dried what we're
That's
requiring, and I don't expect there's going to be a lot of back and forth. We're pretty clear on what we need out of this, and I think that the applicants understand that.
And,
All right.
and Mr. Mayor, members of the council, any overage would be handled by the permit administrative fee that's paid on an annual basis, the $25,000 per permittee. So if there was any overage, as I put it, it would be handled by that particular administration fee.
All right, very good. Thank you, staff. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Victor Sanchez, any questions or comments of staff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one point of, just to clarify, for section 3 and page 10, I think it's a really good job on staff and prudent that the manager be able to apply a percentage change based on the CPI index. So I just want to commend that thought. So thank you. That's it, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Sunny Ynez. Questions?
Yeah, just a quick question, Ms. Stover. I'm just kind of surprised about the background check and live scan. It's only $100, so that includes criminal background check, civil cases, and live scan. It's only $100.
Carl actually does a civil check and the LASD check. We actually already contract with LASD, and the DOJ is what we pay for outside.
Oh, that's cheap. All right, very good. If that's what it is, thank you.
Yeah, I believe those are fees, Sonny, that we've accustomed to paying, so that's what we expect it to be.
It's built into the outrageous charged by the city attorney on this, but yeah.
Okay, that answers my question.
All right, so
I think he meant extremely fair.
Yeah. So we need to open the public hearing on this item.
I make a motion to open the public hearing, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
I'll second that.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilmember San Ynez, supported by Mayor Pro Tem Dutton. Any other comments? If not, roll call, please. Yeah, let's do a roll call on opening the public hearing.
Mayor Pro Tem Dutton,
Aye.
Councilmember Hamada,
Aye.
Councilmember Sanchez,
Aye.
Councilmember Santana,
Aye.
Mayor Coops.
Aye. So is there, Deputy Madam City Clerk, anyone that would like to offer testimony on this item?
Mayor, I'll give the public a moment to utilize the feature. I'm not seeing any raised hands at this time, Mayor.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Second.
All right, so move to close the public hearing by Councilmember San Ynez, supported by, was that Councilmember Hamada?
Yes, sir.
All right. So without further ado, that'll be the situation. We'll close the public hearing. Now we'll move on to anybody want to make a motion or have comment as to what we're going to do on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to make a motion to adopt Resolution 21-09, and that's a resolution adopting a fee to recover costs incurred from processing applications for modifying a CBP as to ownership or business name.
Second.
Is that you, Mr. Dutton?
No, Santana.
Sonny, okay. So we have the motion by Councilmember Hamada, supported by Councilmember San Ynez. No more comments, or are there comments? If not, please give us a roll call.
Mayor Pro Tem Dutton,
Aye.
Councilmember Hamada,
Aye.
Councilmember Sanchez,
Aye.
Councilmember Santanez,
Aye.
Mayor Coops.
Aye. Item number 10A, ordinance and resolutions for consideration. Mr. Stewart?
Before I do that, I want to back up and close loop on the business we have at hand on 9A. With that, so we will engage Kaliva and whomever else as necessary. And we said we believe there's one other, we're still looking into that, on ownership change. But it will be necessary, I believe, because we have a termination of a temporary agreement with Kaliva. We'll need to extend next meeting, Mr. Berger?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the temporary permit for NC3 systems expires February 28th. So we will be bringing back, assuming that we have all the information needed, we will be bringing back that permit for consideration at the next council meeting.
Right, but you will be reaching out to Kaliva to make sure that they're in line with that.
Yeah,
date.
we're gonna. I think we're looking at no more than a 30-day extension. But I want to make sure that Kaliva's on board and that they'll get everything to us in a timely way so we get it done. Because the live scan could take a little time. So I mean, we may ask for 60 days, but it won't be a long period of time.
No, as long as they can stay in operation.
Right.
That's
yeah,
our
that's
concern.
it. I mean, that's the game plan here. So, yeah. All right.
All right. 10A.
Very good. So 10A is a long one. It's consideration and possible action to approve required documents and other related matters for refinancing of 2008 water system certificates participation, 2018 transportation certificates participations with Capital One Public Funding LLC, which includes the following resolutions. First one is resolution number 2111, and it's a resolution approving a site lease, a lease agreement, a trust agreement, and authorizing certain actions in connection with the execution and delivery of refunding certificates of participation in aggregate principal amount not to exceed $15 million. And resolution number BFA 21-303, a resolution approving a site lease, a lease agreement, an assignment agreement, a trust agreement, and authorizing certain actions in connection with the execution and delivery of refunding certificates of participation in the aggregate principal not to exceed $15 million. And those are the first two items we're going to have. As soon as we finish these two items, assuming we do, we'll move on to item B. Mr. Rhee and I know our team that helped with the placement of this thing are all on board, and I'll ask Tay to go ahead and get us started on this one.
All right, Mr. Rhee, you've got the floor.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. Can you see my screen? I'm having some difficulty with the PC.
No, we cannot.
Uh-oh. Please, one more time. Okay, now?
You're getting there.
There we go.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council and Honorable Chairman and Directors of the Bellflower Financing Authority. I have a brief presentation for this item this evening. I'm having, okay, it goes. On January 11th, the City Council approved the term sheet from Capital One to refinance both the 2008 Water System Certificates of Participation and 2018 Transportation Certificates of Participation. Based on the finance team's review at the time, Capital One had provided the best proposal to the city compared to the other two proposals we received, as well as the estimated savings from a public sale. Since then, the finance team has been working diligently with Capital One to prepare the refinancing documents that require both the City Council and the financing authorities for approval this evening. There are 2 resolutions and 4 agreements. The agreements are site lease using the City Hall property as the collateral, lease agreement, trust agreement, and assignment agreement. With this refinancing, the city's interest rate will decrease to 2.3% with Capital One. The current interest rate for the 2018 COPs is 3.07%, and the interest rates for the 2008 COPs range from 4.625% to 5.25%. With the reduced interest rates, the city will save a total of approximately $1.9 million in net present value. This refinancing transaction with Capital One provides for an extraordinary call feature, and this is to allow for the city to pay off the new 2021 COPs in the event municipal water system assets are sold in the future. Please note that Capital One has provided clarification that the city must use only the proceeds from the sale of the municipal water system to repay the debt early under this provision. Staff's recommendation to the City Council and the Financing Authority is to adopt resolution numbers 21-11 and BFA 21-03 and documents related to refinancing the 2008 COPs and 2018 COPs and authorize other related matters, or alternatively discuss and take other action related to this item. This concludes my presentation, and the finance team and I will be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Rhee, for the presentation. Let's start with the accountant of our group, Sunny Sanyanez. Would you have any questions of Mr. Rhee?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Rhee and the finance team, thank you so much for working on this project. The city will tremendously benefit from this. I just have one question for you, Tay. I think we have seen this presentation previously. It's nothing significant. There was no significant change that I can see. One question is, when is the locked-in date for the interest rate? Are we locked in now?
Yes, it is already locked in, guaranteed, as long as we close by the 22nd.
Okay, so we don't have much time. Let's do it. Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much.
I appreciate your enthusiasm, Sonny.
Well, Mayor, it's a huge savings.
It is, you know, and
So I don't want to lose it. Okay.
no, we've got to move forward. Councilmember Victor Sanchez, any questions or comments on Tay Ree's presentation?
Just comments. Want to thank staff for moving quickly on this and making this possible. And I think that getting that ability to pay off early in the case of the water cell is just great business. So good job, staff. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Victor. Councilmember Raymond Hamada, questions or comments of Tay Ree's report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Tay, and the team on this one. In my view, this comes across as a minimum, trifecta of benefits. The refi savings, the timing of the call, and also the property availability frees up the park. So I think there's been some great work here, and looking forward to satisfying the lock-in period. So let's move forward. It's great job. Thank you, Tay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Hamada. Mayor Pro Tem Ray Dunton, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. You can hear me, I bet, too.
I'm picturing you with a can with a long string coming to City Hall with another can.
You're dating yourself now, Mayor.
Right.
Anytime we can save just about $2 million, it's a good day at the City of Bellflower. I just like to give congratulations to our staff for going the extra mile and sorting this out and getting to this point to be able to have this kind of savings. That was it.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Ray Dutton. I feel the same way. I'm glad that we had even competing bids to try to do this deal. And we were able to choose a quality company that's offering to stabilize the rate as long as we get our due diligence and get this approved. So thank you, Tay, for the presentation. Thank you for the support from the City Council. Is this all one, even though it's quite long, will one resolution or one motion take care of all three paragraphs? Or okay, so anybody want to come forward and offer a motion for approval?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I'll be honored to make a motion for the City Council of Bellflower to adopt Resolution 2-11 and for the Bellflower Financing Authority to adopt Resolution BFA-2103.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilmember Sonny Inez and support by Councilmember Victor Sanchez. Any other comments or questions? Roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Dutton.
Aye.
Councilmember Hamada.
Aye.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Aye.
Councilmember Santinez.
Aye.
Mayor Coops.
Aye. All right, 10B, Mr. Stewart.
This is a ministerial action. It's consideration of possible action to wait for the reading and introduce ordinance number 1405, an ordinance amending Bellflower Municipal Code, Chapter 1.16, in its entirety regarding filing claims in compliance with Chapter 1.16, regarding claims with the California Government Claims Act, Government Code Section, you can read it, and filing writs pursuant to the Code of Civil Procedure. We're recommending waiving further reading and introducing this ordinance.
All right, so questions of Mr. Stewart? Mr. Mayor Pro Tem Ray Dutton.
No questions, Mayor.
All right. Councilmember Ray Hamada, any questions of Mr. Stewart?
Mr. Mayor, no questions.
Councilmember Victor Sanchez, any questions of Mr. Stewart?
No questions, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Councilmember Sonny Inez, questions of Mr. Stewart?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just a clarification. Mr. Stewart, on the electronic filing on 1.16.020, the last sentence read, the city will not accept any electronic filings until the city manager promulgates such administrative policies and procedures. So what's your timeline on that?
It shouldn't be very long. Mr. Murray, what do you think? 3 weeks, 2 weeks?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I usually work fairly quickly, so I imagine we'll have a draft by next week.
Yeah.
Okay. And then my second question is on the rate challenge on the next section. So who makes the final decision?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, so each particular section of the municipal code may have a final decision maker. In some instances, it's the city manager. In some instances, it's the city council. But ordinarily, there will be one or the other will make a final decision. So I don't have a complete list in front of me to go through section by section, but any ordinances that have been written, at least under my tenure, specifically state that whatever decision is made is a final decision and may be appealed in accordance with 1094.6.
Which is the city council the final? Let's say something was up, there was a claim presented before, let's say, the planning commission, and it was appealed to the planning commission. Does the appellant basically have the right to appeal it to the city council?
Correct. Ordinarily, any decision made by the planning commission is appealable to the city council, and then the city council would make a decision. Once the city council had made a final decision, then the disgruntled party would be able to appeal that to Superior Court.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thanks for the clarification.
Thank you.
No more questions?
That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I didn't want to cut you off short here. All right, anybody, let's ask if there's anybody that would like in the public to come forward and offer anything on this consideration item.
Mayor, I'll give the public a moment to utilize the feature. Mayor, I'm not seeing any raised hands at this time.
Thank you for looking. All right.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I make a motion, waive further reading and introduce ordinance number 1405.
Second.
All right, so we have Mayor Pro Tem Ray Dutton offering a motion supported by Councilmember Raymond Hamada. No more questions or comments. Please give us the roll call.
Mayor Pro Tem Dutton.
Aye.
Councilmember Hamada.
Aye.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Aye.
Councilmember Santinas.
Aye.
Mayor Coops.
Aye. Item number 11, consideration items.
Yeah, this 11A is another ministerial item. This has to do with the council's decision during the COVID emergency period that they were going to record and broadcast all meetings, including the workshops that we've done. What we've learned through the experience of the COVID is we haven't really done all that many workshops, and the need to broadcast said workshops probably haven't materialized, with the exception of perhaps today, when we had, because of the policy that was in place, we broadcast a 2-hour ethics training workshop, which I don't think is within the spirit of what the council was seeking to do when they first changed that policy. On a go-forward basis, as we look, hopefully, with our fingers crossed, toward the end of COVID, and the council's, it being unnecessary for the council to hold many workshops with regard to the emergency and emergency actions and COVID, we've been able to get most of our work done, the vast majority of our work done, on the 2-week council cycle, that we would suspend that and go back to the original guidelines of broadcasting the regular council meetings and the special council meetings, but not the workshops themselves. And I'm sorry, broadcast the regular meetings, but not the special council meetings and workshops themselves. So that would be our recommendation tonight, and we're looking for approval to do that.
Okay. Any questions of Mr. Stewart? Mr. Santinas?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Just a clarification, Mr. Stewart. I know that special sessions can come in different forms. For example, we have the ethics training today, and then sometimes we have a study session. Sometimes we have another meeting. For example, let's say the cannabis renewal, which is usually happens in December. So I agree with you. I agree with the staff recommendation not to have the study sessions, the training to be broadcast, because I don't think we're trying to hide anything in those study sessions. At the same time, in study sessions, my feeling is we don't really make a decision. We give staff a direction.
Correct.
So we don't vote on study sessions. So what I would suggest is discontinue the special sessions, other than special sessions where the city council makes a decision, which is agendized.
Correct. No, and I agree with you completely. The vast majority of the workshops that we have, there is no specific staff recommendation. We're only looking for a general direction to finish the work that we started. Usually the workshops are an unfinished product. We're looking for midterm course correction from the council so we carry on in the right way. And I think that's a very reasonable amendment to this, that I would change the phrasing slightly in that in items or sessions where we believe staff will make a firm recommendation, we would televise those meetings and broadcast those meetings. And I think that's completely fair.
Well, that's going to be, if there's not going to be a vote anyway, it will come back to city council later on.
Correct. If there's not going to be a vote, it will come back to council. I'm saying that I thought you were asking for, and I agree with, the discretion if there is going to be a workshop, and we would seek a council vote, which frankly we've not done since I've been here. The workshops have always been directional only.
Yeah, that's what I said earlier. I don't think we usually vote on a study session. We usually give direction to staff.
Yeah. So if you're comfortable with the language as is, we'll go. If you want to amend it in the event that we do make a recommendation, that we would alter the policy to televise that meeting.
As long as the decision is agendized.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, okay.
Correction.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Councilmember Victor Sanchez. Any questions, Mr. Stewart?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. No questions. I concur with Councilmember Santinez. I think that's the best way to go about it.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Raymond Hamada.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would echo the comments from my colleagues. Yeah, I think that'd be a fair clarification that can work for the benefit of the community, so that they can actually see things earlier too, and then see it later. So, all right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Hamada. Mayor Pro Tem Ray Dutton. Questions of Mr. Stewart?
No questions, but are you ready for a motion, Mayor?
I am.
I will like to make a motion that we go back the way it was. We would no sense reinventing the wheel.
All right, and I'll support that. So
with Sonny's amendment?
With Sonny's proviso about if it's an agenda item and we're going to vote on it, that we will.
Oh, if there's council action, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Any other comments or questions? Madam City Clerk, please poll the council.
Mayor Pro Tem Dutton.
Aye.
Councilmember Hamada.
Aye.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Aye.
Councilmember Santinez.
Aye.
Mayor Coops.
Aye. All right, number 12, consent calendar. Are there any items council members wish to be polled or separate discussion or consideration?
Pull item 12E for a question and a comment, but not for separate vote.
Okay, 12E. Anyone else have something?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull item B. I'm not sure if we need a separate vote, but definitely a discussion on item B and a comment.
12B.
And then, yeah, so 12B, and then a comment for item D, just a comment, no, I don't get separated from a vote. And then a comment on 12E as well as Councilmember Santinez.
Okay. Anyone else have anything they'd like to pull out?
Mr. Mayor, again, I
Muted.
He's muted.
I'm sorry.
Did he kick out the cord? What happened?
Yeah, no. Staring at the screen, not that part. But I concur with the pulling of 12E for comment, no extra vote.
Okay. Mr. Dutton, have you anything else that you'd like to discuss or pull?
There, now I'm unmuted again. Must be a Ray thing. Oh, Hamada. Hey, yeah, I have nothing special to pull or anything like that. I'm good with it.
Okay. On 12C, I have a conflict, so I will not be participating in 12C. But it sounds like 12E is pretty popular. And let's see what 12E is about, because 3 of the council members would like to have a sister city discussion. All right, Sonny, you brought it forward first, so let's hear your piece on this.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Again, I have one question and one comment. My question is to staff, if we adopt this resolution tonight, when is the sister committee officially dissolved?
Expected tonight, but I don't know that for a fact.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the resolution would take effect immediately and would immediately repeal that committee. Now, my understanding is a practical matter, the Sister Cities Committee has been operating independently, I guess I will say, from the city's strings. I would leave it to PJ to go into more detail on that if you want to, but it would take effect immediately. I can say that we are working on the Articles of Incorporation and the bylaws for the public the nonprofit public benefit corporation that's mentioned in the resolution and in the staff report. And so we expect to have those drafts ready for consideration by members of the committee probably by the end of this week, if not at the beginning of next week.
But just to clarify, we don't need to wait for that for the committee to be resolved as a city committee.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Now, my comment is quite interestingly, I received a phone call from a couple of residents of Bellflower about Sister City, and they were very alarmed. That's why I wanted to pull this item. I guess they have the notion that the city is abandoning the Sister City concept at all. So I assured the callers that, my rule of thumb is if there are 2 callers, it's a major item for me. I want to bring it up. So I received 2 phone calls about this issue, again, about this concern that the city is abandoning this, and I assured them that the city is not. So I just want to assure the viewing public that the City Council of Bellflower is not abandoning the Sister City project. All we're doing is dissolving the Sister City as a committee of the city so that they can form their own 501c3 organization, and that relieves the city of liability, and also at the same time, the Sister City Committee can do their own fundraising. And that will be in addition to any funding that the city of Bellflower will provide. So again, I want to make sure that it is very clear that we are not abandoning the Sister City concept idea. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And Sonny, you could also invite them to view in our archives on the city website, the actual meeting where we had the discussion, where we went out of our way to try to impose on people that we were not trying to hurt the Sister City program in any way, shape, or form. We're simply trying to make them legal part of the city so that we can fund them correctly. And that was all pretty well laid out, chapter and verse, I thought. But I guess rumors get out there that aren't quite correct.
Well, I think, Mr. Mayor, I think what happened was they look at the agenda and they made the conclusion based on the agenda.
Yes, and I even after the meeting the next day, I reached out to Jean Sarantine and her sister and to hear what they had to say about what we were proposing, and they were all in favor of it. And it came across as something that they were very enthusiastic about, that the city would embrace this in such a way that they would help get the proper accounting together so that they would no longer be in non-compliance.
Yeah, I agree totally. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, so 12E was all you had. Let's also include in the discussion, Victor, have you any questions on 12E you want to add?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not so much questions, but I think as Councilmember Santinez pointed out, there was a lot of conversation over this item. And one of those is similar to the idea of whether the city will continue to support the Sister City program. And I had similar calls and meetings with several people who expressed those same concerns. I think that one thing we can do here to show that the city can continue to be involved in the long term is just how we all, the mayor appoints council members to committees and so forth, like Metro and SCAG and all those, and League of Cities and contract cities, is that if the new nonprofit that's incorporated, the NGO, so chooses to have a council member position in their bylaws as something that they like to seek, and then this council can elect to have someone represent the council on that board, I think would be something that could be of consideration. I don't know how we would do that, but again, it would have to be up to the NGO. I know that I spoke to Mr. Perry and Mrs. Espinosa, and that's something that they brought to me, and I think that may be something that we can consider. And that shows that we're interested in the long run, because I know this council is, but who knows what the future lies. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That concludes my comments.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Mr. Hamada, you also had concerns for 12E. You want to offer anything else on this item?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I do want to echo the comments of my colleagues in regards to receiving comments from others about what's going to happen. And again, I advise them rest assured that it will continue, but it's in a different form, of course. And but you'll have some more flexibility in fundraising and promotions and so on. As I mentioned the last time we had our discussion, as the designated Sister City Committee council member, I'm happy to further participate in this, and I can confer with staff in regards to that, on how that right now, as we're working on reforming the organization, so to speak. I'd be happy again to help out. So with that being one of my designated duties, again, I'm again ready to participate. If there's some upcoming meetings scheduled, again, just staff, please advise me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Councilman Hamada. I would invite, it sounds as though all three of you have had interaction with those in the community that were concerned that this Sister City Committee or program was going to be eliminated. But if you could, that Sister City Committee has gotten very low on membership, so keep those names of the folks that we wanted to make sure it continued, and we need to invite them to be a participant when we reform this in a legal fashion. All right, 12B, Mr. Hamada.
Mr. Mayor, that was not.
Oh, that was
me,
Victor. 12B
Mr.
for
Sen.
Victor. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to pull this item because I know why we're seeking to kind of do a study on the density for the downtown, but I was hoping to have a conversation and possibly expanding the focus point, not just in the downtown, but also into the Artesia corridor and the Clark areas, or wherever the staff deem necessary. But I believe that if we're going to try to address the RENA numbers and everything else, we're going to need other areas than the downtown. So I just wanted to bring this up for conversation and hopefully a further vote to expand the study.
Yeah, if I could add some clarification to that, I spoke with Mr. Sanchez this afternoon on this, and the study is not necessarily a study on density per se. It is a study on the economic impact and what they earn and what they take away of doing residential units on Bellflower Boulevard. I don't disagree that this would be valuable along Artesia Boulevard and sections of Clark Avenue. We'd have to sit and discuss which sections of those boulevard we want studied, because I don't think you can do the totality of each like you can Bellflower, which is a north-south conductor that seems ripe for that sort of analysis. But nonetheless, I don't think it's hard to expand. I did speak to the consultant today at Harris, And she indicated that, yes, that they certainly were able to do that. It's not a necessarily burdensome item to do, but would add some cost to the. So if the council is looking to expand that discussion for portions of Artesia Boulevard, and I think that's worthwhile because we have a couple large parcels in Artesia that might be ripe for residential development. We might as well get a handle on what that's going to look like as well, financially at least. And Clark, which we're still trying to make sense of on Clark, what it's going to be and what its future is. It shouldn't be that much more money. So what if the council agrees with Mr. Sanchez's notion, what we have on the agenda tonight is an amendment to the existing agreement with Harris Associates for $30,000. And that would cover the additional costs remaining of this contract, which exceeds the amount the council approved for Harris before. So there would be, right now, the study is quoted at $48,000, and we'd need $30,000 to do Bellflower Boulevard. If the council seeks to expand that notion to include Clark and Artesia, Ms. Mosesman said today that she thought that amount shouldn't exceed $15,000 more. She thought it'd be less, but we're erring on the outside amount, so we don't exceed it. And if we get into the study and find out it's something different, we'll deal with it then. But if right now, if the council is amenable to expanding that concept, then we'd recommend that Section 1 of the file, which is in the attached to the staff report, Amendment 2 to the agreement between City of Bellflower and Harris Associates, and Section 1 should be amended from, instead of $30,000 as added, it would be $45,000 as added. And short of that, I'll take the council's direction on which way they want to go.
All right. Mr. Dutton, would you like to spend $15,000 to increase the area we're going to investigate for housing?
That depends if we have staff time to follow up with it. Yes, we have consultants and all that, but it still is a burden on staff, and we are shorthanded in the planning department.
I believe we do. I think it would be one meeting with a consultant that we could do by a Zoom call, and it should be, I'm estimating a half an hour. What I'd like to do is, and I know Ms. Corpus has looked at this a couple of times, is identify those areas along the boulevards that are worthy of study, and then I'd get back to Mr. Sanchez to make sure that that covers what his needs are, because not every area of Artesia, and certainly not every area of Clark, is probably worthy of the study, because frankly, it just isn't the space to build the kind of housing you need to do this kind of analysis. But certainly there are parcels on both streets that we should look at, and we just have to identify those, call them out, and go from there. And I would ask Mr. Sanchez if that's what he was envisioning when we talked about this today.
Absolutely,
Okay.
Mr. City Manager.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I believe that we have the staff time. I don't believe it's a significant amount of staff time invested in doing this.
So Ray, Mr. Dutton, what do you think?
Well, then, I'm good, Nan. I'm
All
good.
right.
I was worried about overburdened staff because they are buried
No, I get
in the
it.
planning department.
No, I understand. Ray Hamada, have you an idea as to whether or not to spend the $15,000 to increase our flexibility on housing?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm definitely open to it as long as there's coordination with staff time, which was brought up, and also our housing element consultant is working hard too on trying to locate sites, and we haven't yet received that information yet on where and how to approach that. So for additional 15 to look at some key sites in some of the areas, I think it's beneficial.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I didn't even think about that. You're right. The housing consultant has probably already looked at this and has some ideas already. So we'll certainly include that information.
Yes, thank you, staff.
Yeah.
All right, Councilmember Sonny Sanyanez, opinion on this item?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to comment on this, because I agree. I would like to echo the comment from Mayor Pro Tem Dunn, because a couple of meetings ago, I asked for a study. I followed on the study on Lakewood Boulevard, and we got a response that the staff is just overwhelmed. and Lakewood Boulevard cannot be studied until 2022. And
Yes.
so my concern, it's not the amount of money we're spending for the consultant. To me, 15,000 is a very small amount. It's what do you do with the data, given the staff, the shortage of staff that we have right now.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think the reason this is taking precedence is that it dovetails into the housing element that we're looking at now. I'd rather air some of the stuff out now, because if we are really going to look at density on these corridors, I want to know the economic impact before we go forward with a housing element that specifies that we should increase the residential densities here. Lakewood is a little different animal. I'm not viewing that boulevard. I'm not certain I'm speaking for anybody else, but in my own mind, I'm certainly not viewing that boulevard as a destination for additional high density housing. I think it's somewhat different sort of animal there. But this one, I'm just trying to capture the work that's being done by the housing consultant now, and understanding that we're not buying into something that's going to cost us a heck of a lot more than we thought it was, and may even provide some economic benefit, which is what we're trying to study, because this housing element that we're doing now is really going to shape this community for quite a while. And I want to make sure we do it correctly. And that's the reason why this is taking precedence.
Any other comments, Sonny?
Well, let's do a separate vote on this item.
Well, we will. So Victor, I want to thank you for representing that district that you're bringing forward. I know where you stand on this, or you wouldn't have brought it forward. But if you have any other comments, now's your chance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one additional question for purposes of clarification on the economics impacts in the study or analysis. Is this going to be for a service type of identification, like business types that would be provided in the economic impact? Can you clarify what economic impact means?
No, I don't know, and I can't say the economic impact. What I'm talking about on this, and what we're trying to get a handle on, is the revenues produced from housing, which is obviously the taxes there, the costs of the housing, which would be the services that are provided, and some of the mechanisms that we could use to offset those costs if they are indeed a deficit. For years, we've operated from the assumption that the cost of producing additional housing units is more than the actual revenues derived from those houses. We don't know that. We do know there are models of economic development spin-offs from that. I don't think we can necessarily identify the types of businesses that spin off there, but there are models of the economic spin-off that come from producing high-density housing. I will speak with a consultant to see if there's any kind of specificity we can get with regard to the types of economic activities that we'd be promoting, but I don't think we know that yet. What I'm looking for is what the paradigm says it's going to be. What I've learned over the years is there's a lot of myths about what's developed and what's not developed, and what's going to produce revenue and what's not going to produce revenue. And then when we dig into them and start looking into them, it may or may not be true. What I'm looking at is, at a minimum, there's going to be a push to develop housing along Bellflower Boulevard. I know that, and it's why it's the most attractive boulevard to invest in the housing in. It's going to command the highest price for the multi-unit housing and the highest rents in the multi-unit housing that we actually build in this community. Secondarily, it goes to help the businesses that we're currently establishing and embellishing on the boulevard now. So I think what we're looking at is to see what those numbers look like on a pretty speculative matter. As far as what the activities are, I don't think we can reasonably expect to know that with this study.
Copy. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that point of clarification. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. So at this time, I would ask the city clerk to poll the council as to their thoughts on this item.
Is there a motion, Mayor?
Yeah,
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I would like to make a motion for the City Council to adopt the consent calendar, excluding 12B.
Okay, let's do it that way.
Second, by Hamada.
All right, so we have a motion by Sonny Santinez for support of the City Council consent calendar, and it was supported by Ray Hamada. Please poll the council.
I'm sorry, Mayor, there was one more item for discussion only.
Oh, that's right. Before we go forward, we had 12B from Victor.
Mr. Mayor, 12D.
Yeah, 12B. Yes. Victor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick comment on that. Just want to thank staff, PJ and staff for their continued efforts on finding funds and bringing the soccer fields to Sims Park and other improvements to Sims Park as well. So just want to give a quick comment on that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That concludes my comment.
All right. Thank you, Victor. All right, we're ready for a vote. I think everybody said their piece. Go forward, Madam City Clerk.
Tim Dutton,
Aye.
Councilmember Hamada,
Aye.
Councilmember Sanchez,
Aye.
Councilmember Santinas,
Aye.
Mayor Coops.
Aye. All right, so on a separate vote, we're going to consider the item having to do with spending the extra $15,000. So I'm going to have the city clerk poll us now as to what your thoughts are on that. Madam City Clerk, yea or nay on that?
Is there a motion for that item?
All right, we need a motion from the council to bring this forward.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve amendment number 2, agreement file number 855 in a form approved in the city attorney with the Harris Associates to extend the term for 1 year and provide compensation for on-call advisory services with the amendment.
All right, do we have support from Mr. Sanchez's motion?
Second, Hamada.
All right, so we have Victor Sanchez making the motion, supported by Raymond Hamada. Please poll the council.
Pro Tem Dutton,
Aye.
Councilmember Hamada,
Aye.
Councilmember Sanchez,
Aye.
Councilmember Santinas,
No.
Mayor Coops.
Aye. All right, so that passed. Council comments. I'll do mine last, but Mayor Pro Tem Dutton, go forward, please.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I would like to apologize for all my technical difficulties, and hopefully the next council meeting will go a little better for me. With that said, everybody, I wish have a blessed night.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Ray Dutton. Councilmember Raymond Hamada.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hopefully, just quickly here, again, it was another couple weeks of Zooming on January 28th and February 4th. I did attend the California Contract Cities legislative tour. I believe Councilman Santinas and Sanchez were on the calls. Again, we heard from various legislators. I think on the 28th, Senator Portantino and Senators Stern, and again, some of the comments they laid out. And I know Portantino has been around for a while, and he works through the lens of a father. And that's how he was described, and that's a nice description for the senator. And Senator Stern is definitely busy also, and is out there trying to make changes. Sometimes he's on the minority side, but he's also working hard, he says. On the 4th, we heard from the Lieutenant Governor. She gave us the update on how the state's responding to COVID. So we did hear a brief video from the governor, also just praising the good works of the local governments, and hopefully that will be supported by him. Also heard from Senator Rubio and an Assembly person, Sawyer from LA, a local here who I've met in Sacramento before, and he's very active too, and working hard for his constituents and the region. On the 4th, I also attended the SCAG transportation committees and the regional council, and just some updates there. The transportation committee recommended the smart cities and mobility innovations guidelines to to the RC. And also they recommended an action to increase broadband in the region, and again to bridge the digital divide. And the regional council also conferred with that, or concluded with that. I think I may have mixed up something, but the Transportation Committee recommended that the 2021 Federal Transportation Implementation Program, and that sets the foundation again for nearly 2,000 public works projects valued at $35 billion throughout our region. It was the regional council that approved the broadband action, and again helping out those areas underserved by broadband. So hopefully to bridge the digital divide. And that's my report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Hamada. Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to add, as Mr. Hamada, our Councilmember Hamada has already mentioned some of the activities we've been participating in. I did participate in 4 sessions for new council members and new electeds with the League of Cities. It was a good session, learned a lot of good stuff, and I will continue to take some additional courses with the League of Cities. That's pretty much it, Mr. Mayor, at this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Sanchez. Councilmember San Ynez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have one comment. Ms. Stover, can you show that slide?
Yes, the Deputy City Clerk will show that momentarily.
Okay. As I've reported before, I've been working with the Sanitation District Personnel Committee, and we have done a significant reduction in the connection fee. And finally, we got this chart, and I just want to kind of show it to you how much reduction on the connection fee has become. So for example, for a single family home, used to be $4,400, now it's down to about $1,500. For a 20-unit apartment building, used to be $52,000, now it's down to $17,000. And for a typical restaurant, it used to be $105,000, now it's down to $35,000. And for a conversion of a store to a restaurant, used to be $100,000, now it's down to $33,000. So the only caveat here is this is the typical, so the actual rate can vary city to city, but it will not deviate too much from this rate. So it's good news that I want to show to everyone, especially our developers, our builders, that there's good news in terms of the sewer connection fee. So thank you, Mayor. That's all I have.
That's an excellent report, Councilman San Ynez. I really enjoy seeing those reductions in figures.
Yeah, it's significant, Mayor. Thank you.
Yes. So I have the task of announcing a couple of passings in our city. Calvin Henry Vander Ark. Cal Vander Ark, as he's well known. Born in Pella, Iowa, January 25th, 1939. Passed away January 26, 2021, just one day after his 82nd birthday. The Vander Ark family moved to California in 1941, where Cal and his siblings attended Bellflower Christian School, a passion that continued until the day he passed away. Cal worked for the post office until he retired and spent his retirement years volunteering at Valley Christian in the athletic department. In 1979, he married Linda, and they raised 4 children together. Cal was involved in the children's sports activities as well as instilling in them a great Christian faith. He leaves behind his wife, Linda, their children, Heather, Kristen, Cam, and Tanya, as well as grandchildren. Cal was preceded in death by his parents, his siblings, Ted, Lee, Arnie, and Ruth, as well as a grandson, Jonah Dantama. Our deepest sympathies and heartfelt condolences go out to the entire Vander Ark family. For years, Cal was a fixture in our community, carrying mail in the area of Artesia and Woodruff. He was just there for years and years and years. Everybody knew him, and everybody loved him. Important part of our community has passed on, and I just wanted to make this mention of it tonight and adjourn our meeting in his honor. Also, Hugh Teitsworth, longtime Bellflower resident. Hugh Teitsworth passed away on January 26, 2021, after a long battle with cancer. He was 79 years old. Huey, as he's known to his family and friends, grew up on Nickel Street and was a graduate of Bellflower High School, the class of 1959. He purchased a house on Nickel Street next to his parents, Minor in Virginia, and his brother purchased a house across the street from them. He was proud to call Bellflower his home. And he had many fond memories of cruising Bellflower Boulevard back in the day. Huey would always display his cars. He had a club that he was part of. They usually had their cars out about where the fire museum is. They moved a little bit more to the south when the museum came, but he was always a fixture at any of our car shows. Hugh owned H&H Motors, especially Volkswagen repair shop in Long Beach for many, many years. When he retired, he used his passion for cars to completely restore several vintage Fords, many of which have received multiple car show awards and magazine features. Huey was a kind and generous man who always had a positive word and a laugh to share. He's survived by his wife of 38 years, Linda, his sons Jeff and Eric, daughter Erin, 5 grandchildren, Andrew, Tyler, Travis, Brandon, Alana, 2 great-grandchildren, Addie and Maverick. He's also survived by his brother Robert, sister Jenny, and many nieces and nephews and cousins. He will truly be missed by his family and friends, including the 40s Limited Car Club. Our deepest sympathies and heartfelt condolences go out to the entire Teitsworth family. So that's announcing the demise of 2 wonderful Bellflower residents, and we're going to adjourn the meeting in their honor. The next meeting of our council will be 5:30 p.m. Monday, February 22nd, 2021. This meeting is adjourned.